Good evening. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of April 8th, 2024 to order. Would you please join the board and me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Scarpaniti, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Trustee Nagel.
Here.
Trustee Reddy.
Here.
Trustee Manzo.
Here.
We have a quorum. President Herman.
Here.
All right. Trustee Jane. Trustee Jane, will you please confirm that you are on the call and state your reason for remote participation?
I am on the call and I'm remote because of medical care for an immediate family member.
Okay. Trustee Tazinga, can you please confirm that you are on the call and state your reason for remote participation?
Yes, I am present and I'm out of town on business.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to start by talking about our Emergency Services and Disaster Agency, or ESDA, which plays a vital role in supporting our community during emergencies by coordinating response efforts and providing critical assistance when disasters strike. Tonight, we are proud to introduce and officially swear in our newest group of ESDA volunteers. These dedicated individuals have committed their time and energy to keeping our community safe and prepared. Assistant Village Manager Mitchell, would you please like to introduce our volunteers?
Good evening, and thank you, President Herman. Tonight, we are proud to officially swear in the following members of our ESDA team. Donald Zeman, serving as our ESDA coordinator. Denise Zeman. Dee Dugo. Michael Dugo. And Dr. Mark Moy. These individuals bring with them a wealth of experience, a commitment to service, and shared dedication to the safety and the well-being of the village of Oakbrook.
Thank you. Are we going to swear them in now? How are we going to do that?
All right, how about you sort of face me? You can have everybody raise their right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Solemnly swear that I will support and defend and bear true faith and allegiance. I'll make it shorter. Okay. I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. And bear true faith and allegiance. To the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Illinois. And the territory, institutions, and facilities thereof. Both public and private. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservations. Or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully. Discharge the duties. Upon which I am about to enter. And I do further swear. That I do not advocate. Nor am I. Nor have I been. A member of any political party or organization. That advocates the overthrow of the government. Of the United States. Or this state by force or violence. And that during such time as I am affiliated. With the Emergency Services and Disaster Agency. I will not advocate. nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of the state by force or violence. Thank you so much, everyone. And Jill,
Thank you.
I apologize, it's a very long winded there, but that's required by state statute for that swearing in that length.
Thank you. Is everyone else here in the audience here to also volunteer to ESDA? Is that, no other volunteers? Spread the word, we'd like to get more people involved. Speaking of getting people involved, I would like to congratulate all those who were elected in last Tuesday's elections. I also thank all those who are willing to serve our community by running for office. Serving our community through elected office and other volunteer roles can be very time-consuming. It can be thankless and often stressful. Oak Brook is blessed to have a very engaged community, and because of that, our elections are often passionate and issues-based. Oak Brook proudly has a diverse community, which our Community Engagement Committee will again be celebrating on August 24th, this August 24th, with live entertainment, traditional exhibits, and food vendors from just some of the very many cultural groups represented in our village. I, like many of our residents, really enjoy learning so much about other cultures from our Oak Brook friends and neighbors. As a diverse community, we strive to be tolerant and embracing. There is no place for hate speech, or hate crimes anywhere, especially in Oak Brook. During the run-up to last week's election, very serious allegations were brought to my attention about hateful phone calls and text messages being made to many Oak Brook residents. As initially requested by one of the individuals making the claims, I immediately asked our village manager to work with the individual and our police department to investigate the matter. I also had a statement included in our weekly e-newsletter urging candidates to avoid identity-based attacks. I'm relieved to advise that after a thorough investigation by our police department that involved contacting 13 individuals who were alleged to have received phone calls or texts with hate statements, 11 of them were interviewed by our police department, and not one of such allegations had proven to be true. 2 of the individuals contacted did not return the calls to the police department. That there now appears to have been no such hate calls and texts is reaffirming to my belief in Oak Brook as a welcoming and tolerant community for all. I want to be very clear. While there's no home for hate speech or crimes in Oak Brook, there equally is no home in Oak Brook for false allegations of hate speech or hate crime. Let's continue to celebrate and embrace our diversity and continue our collaboration to further Oak Brook as a welcoming community for all. That concludes my opening comments. Now we are up to the public comment section. Whether your comment is on an agenda or a non-agenda item, all speakers will be called at this time. Speakers are limited to a period of no more than 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board may comment on issues of public interest relating to the operations of the village. While all comments are welcome, we ask for civility and will not tolerate personal attacks on members of this board or village staff. There were sign-in sheets to speak on the counter. I believe a number of people have signed in, but I want to start by saying that I imagine many of you have signed up to speak about Agenda Item 10 regarding the Bethlehem Tennis Club. I'd like to save those comments for that agenda item. So if there's anyone that has signed up for public comment on an issue other than Agenda Item number 10, please raise your hand and we'll call you up now.
I have 2 people that signed up for street safety.
Okay, please call them up.
Karen Kurek,
Please come to the microphone. Good, please come to the microphone. Please introduce yourself when you get to the microphone.
Good evening. I'm Ron Paparocki. I'm a resident of the Tartan Lakes community. I'm joined by a few of our neighbors as well. Thank you so much for hosting the meeting and allowing us to speak. I'm concerned about the safety of 35th Street. That's not quite 1 mile long in Oak Brook, but it's been the scene of 2 fatal head-on collisions over the past 5 years. I wonder why it's not so safe. I think The number of do not pass signs and the placement of those signs is inadequate. And I think as we took a look at what that actually looked like, driving eastbound on 35th from Midwest, there's a do not pass sign about 0.2 of a mile in. That's just a tad east of the Lakes community on the north side of the street. There is not another do not pass sign until about 0.8 of a mile down the road, well past Pasquinelli Road. Nothing at Tartan Lakes Drive, nothing at Oakmont Drive or Oakwood Drive, the scene of those two fatal accidents. What can be done? I am not an expert in traffic safety. Ask my wife, she'll tell you that. But I think the key is that there can be some things that I think are reasonable. I'm asking the board to consider. Additional do not pass signs, yellow striping that for some reason stops at the peak of a hill for an entrance into Tartan Lakes. That was the scene roughly of those two fatal accidents. The idea of speed is also an issue that contributes to these accidents, and we would entertain any ideas or suggestions that you may have that can make our common street a more safe community. That's my statement. So I may respond to any questions that you may have.
I appreciate it. This is not a forum for public discussion. It's for public comment, but I appreciate your comments. Would you please leave your contact information with Police Chief Strokas?
Will do.
And I'm going to ask him to have him or someone in this department follow up with you, and we get more details and
Great.
look into this.
And time-wise, do you know when I might be able to hear back from the chief?
He's right there.
Very soon. All right, good deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. We also have Mark Fitzgibbon.
I'm sorry? You won't be speaking? Okay.
Okay, so all the other speakers are for the agenda item? Okay, then moving on to our business. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Trustees meeting of March 11th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any objections? Motion carries. Would you now please direct your attention to the screen where the consent agenda is displayed? Does any board member wish to have any item removed from the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and authorize expenditures as presented or amended?
So moved.
Second.
Clerk Scarpaniti, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel. Yes. Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Motion, did you get?
Do we have to do Jane and Tasinga?
Yes.
Trustee Tasinga.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to active business, Resolution R-2287, a resolution authorizing and approving the execution of a purchase order to Insight Public Sector, Inc. for the purchase of Cradle Point mobile routers with 3-year NetCloud essentials for cloud management and external antenna. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2287?
So moved.
Second.
Director Gilbert, would you please present this resolution?
Yes, thank you, President Herman. The fire department has faced operational interruptions due to outdated modems that were hand-me-down from the police department, which are incompatible with the newer 5G cellular transmissions. To enhance operational efficiency and streamline communication equipment management within the IT department, the procurement of standardized equipment is proposed. Following a transparent and competitive process, Insight Public Sector has been selected as the most cost-effective supplier, ensuring quality and reliability.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Tasinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution R-2290, a resolution authorizing the award of contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Cerniglia Company of Melrose Park, Illinois, for the Woodside and Forest Glen Water Main Improvement Project. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2290?
So moved.
Second.
Director O'Malley, would you please present this item?
Thank you, President Herman. This item is for the construction phase of the Woodside Forest Glen Water Main Improvement Project. $6.5 million have been budgeted for the project. 4 sealed bids were received and opened on March 6th. The village's consulting engineer, Bollinger Locke and Associates, for the design and construction of the project recommends that we award the contract to Cerniglia Company of Melrose Park based on the lowest responsible bidder for an estimated cost of $6,208,040.80.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2291, a resolution awarding a professional engineering services agreement for the village's Jory Boulevard over Ginger Creek Culvert Rehabilitation to BLA Inc. of Itasca, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2291?
So moved.
Second.
Director O'Malley, back to you.
Thank you. $593,000 for design and engineering, including construction, has been approved for this project. January 30th, staff requested proposals for engineering for the Jory Boulevard over Ginger Creek Culvert Rehab from the list of 6 pre-qualified consultants from applicable engineering disciplines. One proposal was received by the February 19th deadline. 5 of the 6 consultants chose not to submit a proposal. 2 of the consultants indicated that their current work capacity would not allow them to meet the village's desired schedule. The proposal from Bollinger Locke and Associates was reviewed for consistency and project approach, scope of services, and consultant experience. BLA has recently completed several projects for the village, and based on successful completion of these projects and the familiarity that BLA has with the village, we are confident in awarding design and construction engineering to BLA, Itasca, Illinois, in the amount of $129,326.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Director O'Malley, could you talk to me a little bit about why we think so few bidders, apart from just the time of year, and whether or not this is a project we could consider pushing back to ensure that we have adequate bidders and an adequate assessment of whether or not this is an appropriate contract?
Sure. This is primarily time of year. Most consultants have their year's construction projects booked. This is a specialty project. It's a retaining wall next to the culvert along Jory, so it is a specialized, not many of the consultants out of the 10, you can see five of the 6 consultants out of the 10 are only qualified to do this work. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Like I said, the qualified list is what we go off the RFQ, so that's what we rely on.
And is the project time sensitive?
I believe November 25 is completion, so I think that may have scared some of the consultants away, but we wanted to do it in a timely manner. The culvert was inspected last year, and it got a very poor rating, so prior to any collapse or accidents happening along that corridor, we'd like to have it fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Is this grant funded in any way?
Not this one, I don't think.
No, okay.
This project is not grant funded, but there's a sensitivity to the fact that a collapse in the structural wall could result in damage to the structural bridge above. And so there's a sensitivity that if it's deferred too far, we could result in a lot more damages.
Right. This it was identified last year, so we wanted to pursue it as soon as possible, and this is the soonest. So.
Any other discussion? Clerk Scarpinato, may I have roll call vote, please?
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2292, a resolution awarding a professional engineering services agreement for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system replacement for AC5, AC6, AC7, and AC8 units at Butler Government Center and Oprah Police Department to Kluber Architects and Engineers of Aurora, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2292?
So moved.
Second.
Director O'Malley, it's your turn again.
Thank you, President Herman. $690,000 have been budgeted for the improvements on the Butler Center, Butler Government Center, improvements for 4 HVAC units, as stated. They are between 5 and 7 years past their expected life, or past their rated life expectancy. With this budgeted item, there's also a $500,000 Department of Economic Opportunity grant to financially supplement this project. January 20th, staff requested proposals for engineering for the HVAC system replacement at the BGC from a list of only 3 consultants that were pre-qualified. One proposal was received on the February 6th deadline. 2 of the 3 consultants chose not to submit a proposal. The proposal from Kluber Architects and Engineers was reviewed for consistency of project approach, scope of services, and project experience. It was deemed compliant with the request for proposals and village needs. Kluber Architects has successfully completed other projects throughout the village, including the Park District, Bath and Tennis, and the Golf Clubhouse. We are confident in awarding the amount, Kluber Engineer Architects in the amount of $196,875.
Thank you. Any discussion?
So,
I have a,
Go ahead, Trustee Jane.
just a question. I know we had a walkthrough and we are expecting major capital decisions around the Butler Government Center because not only the air conditioning, but we have a lot of other capital challenges coming our way. So the question I have is, where do we stand in terms of getting a better understanding of what some of the critical decisions we have to make in the Butler Government Center as we are spending additional amount of money to solve some of the problems we have right now, which I understand. But where do we stand in terms of understanding what is coming our way around the Butler Government Center around capital improvements?
Thank you, Trustee Jane. I'll take that one. Yes, we did those walkthroughs and showed the board a number of issues with this current facility. I think the primary underlying issue of all of them being some movement in the structural frame of the building, causing some issues with the facility. The board expressed at that time some concerns that the scope was too large on that particular project. It is currently being redrafted as a structural engineering only study. But these units themselves are lighter than the existing units. The VAV boxes, everything else will be lighter than the existing and actually reduce burden on the facility. We've also got an upcoming roof replacement project that we've got to do. So we've got active leaks in the roof of this building. And two of these 4 mechanical units are down, I would say, about monthly. I would invite Director O'Malley if he's got additional data on that, but are down roughly once a month, and we often have to wait 2 to 3 days because we're sourcing used parts, often from outside the country, to keep the systems operational. So we certainly can't keep these units going much longer. We've actually had to modify used parts because we can't even get the exact compatible used parts. So there's no effect. As a matter of fact, 2 of these units don't even sit on the rooftop. Director O'Malley, do you know where the other 2 sit?
They're at the east entrance?
Okay. So they're not on the rooftop.
No.
So none of these units sit on the rooftop, so they have no bearing on the structure of the building. We certainly are going to, be able to make minor structural modifications to reinforce this building. There won't be any changes that would affect these systems.
Yeah. And to your point, AC 7 and 8, like you said, are obsolete. We have to scavenge parts throughout the country. 5 and 6 are shortly thereafter. And the time-sensitive nature of the DCEO grant, we don't want to lose the $500,000 to supplement the project.
I was just going to say, great job on finding the grant, and I was going to ask the same question, that I wanted to make sure we weren't replacing something that was going to have to be replaced in a bigger structural issue with the building. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Tasinga. Trustee Tasinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jane. Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, Resolution R-2293, a resolution authorizing and approving the execution of a purchase order for one 2025 Ford Explorer to Curry Motors of Frankfort, Illinois, May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2293?
So moved.
Second.
Director O'Malley, would you please present this resolution?
Thank you, President Herman. The village currently leases vehicles from Enterprise Fleet Management, and the following recent purchase of several admin vehicles because of their current value versus the trade-in value, we are reevaluating the entire lease program at this time to provide the best value to the village. After reviewing the lease and purchase options, staff determined that the purchase of a 2025 Ford Explorer rather than leasing is in the best interest of the village. This will replace the current vehicle, which is a 2019 Chevy Tahoe, which has reached the end of its lease and will be returned to Fleet Enterprise for auction, which proceeds directly go back to the village. By using the Suburban Purchasing Co-op, the village compared pricing from the awarded contract with Curry Motors for leasing options. The vehicle would cost approximately $68,000 over the course of the lease versus $48,000 to purchase, with the ability to extend the life of the vehicle past the 5-year threshold that we currently have at a savings of approximately $7,000 to $9,000 per year. Staff recommends waiving the further bidding to issue a purchase to Curry Motors, Frankfort, Illinois, for the 2025 Ford Explorer in the amount of $47,130.
Thank you. So we've had prior discussions over the last couple of years about when it comes time to acquire a new vehicle, whether or not we purchase or lease.
Right.
As a reminder, a few years ago, the board decided that it was going to enter into a leasing program to lease virtually all the vehicles in the village, from police vehicles to public works to development services and so forth. I think what we've concluded over the last couple of years is that leasing is not always in our best interest. It may make sense for the heavy-duty vehicles such as police cruisers, but we can get a lot more life out of a lower usage vehicle such as a development services vehicle. And so what you're seeing here is a transition in our approach to purchasing vehicles that we think we can get longer life out of, but potentially continuing to lease vehicles that are heavy wear and tear. So with that, any other discussion?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've been going back to, and I just want to commend you guys. You did a great job on the analysis in terms of the leasing versus buying. And it comes out not all that different over a 5-year period. We have to assume the same useful life in order to make the comparison. But to the extent that, to President Herman's comment, to the extent that we can use some of these lighter use vehicles any longer than 5 years, then that difference becomes much, much larger over time. So it's very clear that purchasing these light use vehicles is much more economically feasible.
Yeah, thank you. We did put a lot of research into this, and basically, we can acquire a vehicle for a better price than fleet. However, their trade-in value is usually almost double what we get just because of their approach to the whole, the nationwide access for trade-in. So it's kind of a wash. What we really make out is the following year past the 5, because then you just assume whatever your lease payment was multiplied times 12 months, that's what we're saving. So we can extend the life of some of these admin vehicles, maintain them in-house, and extend the life, and that's where we really make the money on them.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Go ahead.
So, looks like, thank you for doing the research, team, Mary. And looks like any vehicle you are keeping more than 5 years, it's better to buy than lease. So is it, we are going forward, we'll be following this as a policy, or we'll be dealing with reviewing on a case-by-case basis?
Right, currently, we're going to take it by a case-by-case because, as Village Manager Summers said, some vehicles are dependent on
For the low utility ones?
for usage. It makes sense for the upfit. The resale isn't as good, but we're reevaluating every vehicle in the village for this cause.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tsinga.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, Resolution R-2294, a resolution approving the award of contract for the Sports Core Property Capital Improvements Project to Schroeder Asphalt Services of Huntley, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2294?
So moved.
Second.
Director Segura, would you please present this? Oh, you're going to take it? Director
This one's
O'Malley?
mine,
okay.
thank you. $640,000 was approved in the fiscal year '25 budget for the sports court parking lot and the golf course driving range pad. A solicitation for bids for the 2025 Sports Corps Property Improvements Project was posted on March 17th. 7 sealed bids were received, opened up on March 27th. Our consulting engineer, Christopher Burke, recommends that we award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder, to Schroeder Asphalt, Inc., Huntley, Illinois, in the estimated amount of $311,738.70. This project work is in conjunction with the golf course driving range construction. And that's it, I'm sorry.
That it? Yeah. So I understand that once you bring a concrete truck in to pour the curbs for the parking lot, you might as well use that to pour the pads for the driving range, right? So we're going to get some efficiencies there.
That's correct. It was more fiscally responsible to let these both project at the same time so they wouldn't have to mobilize. We could set up the project at the same time, excavate, prep, and then pour concrete.
Discussion, questions? This came in a little bit under budget, is that what I recall?
It did. Overall budget was $640. This came in at $311. However, there are some construction costs incurred with this on top, but we're well under budget.
All right, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin. Trustee Nagel. Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga. Trustee Tosinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jane. Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Next item, Resolution R-2295, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and the Village of Oak Brook for stormwater system improvements. May I have a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2295?
So moved.
Second.
Village Manager Summers, would you please present this item?
Yes, as a result of some of the improvements that we're doing at the sports court, there's a need for additional stormwater detention, just like we require of private developments. That has been designed to be captured in the basin that sits next to the existing salt barn through some modifications to that basin. There's obviously expense associated with that. This year, DuPage County put in place a grant program where they will cede certain amount of monies to the municipalities and one of those projects is stormwater improvement projects. We applied for that and were granted $20,000. So this is an agreement with the county to capture that $20,000 to offset cost of that detention basin project.
Thank you. Discussion? Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga. Trustee Tosinga?
Yes, I'm sorry, there's a lag in my sound, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Next item, Ordinance S-1725, an ordinance authorizing amendments and transfers among budget line items for the Village of Oak Brook, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of Ordinance S-1725?
So moved.
Second.
Director Famero, would you please present this?
Certainly. Good evening. This is a final budget amendment transfer between multiple budget line items that results in a net revenue increase for $451,719. Notable items have to do with year-end entries made on the recommendation of auditors, one of them being the Axon 5-year installment contract for our government-wide financial statements that is picked up as a capital asset and a long-term liability at the fund level, which is how we budget. We're required to take the capital outlay, and we'll also have a revenue source to cover that capital outlay, offsetting each other. It's a little bit over $3 million. The other item that is notable is the tax increment financing reimbursement to the taxing bodies. That took, even though the village voted to close the TIF in 2023, the property taxes are a year behind, so we had to go through the process of ensuring that we receive all funds before we turned around and made one payment back to the assessor's office to be distributed to all the taxing bodies. funny enough, is that they weren't sure how to do the process because this hardly ever happens. So we needed to escalate it and be able to get to their head of their department to work out how they were going to distribute the funds. So those are funds collected in 2023, and also the reimbursement of property taxes collected in 2024, and those payments were made.
Thank you. Questions, discussion? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga.
Yes, and yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We have another ordinance, S-1726, another ordinance authorizing amendments and transfers among budget line items for the Village of Oak Brook, Illinois. May I have a motion for the approval of ordinance S-1726?
So moved.
Second.
Back to you, Director Famero.
So this ordinance is to reflect is an increase of $718,925 for the increase in the general fund, utilizing reserves to purchase the acquisition of land.
Discussion, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Tosinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Motion carries. On to the item I think most of the audience is here for, ordinance S-1724, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a first addendum to the license agreement by and between the Village of Oak Brook and Chic Chef Catering, Inc. So I'm going to kick this off with I'll warn you, a fairly lengthy introduction, so bear with me. And let me start by being abundantly clear that I will not be calling this item for approval this evening, but rather an introduction and discussion of the proposal so that we may elicit board and public feedback for further analysis. I am aware that there are some conspiracy theories floating around about this topic and how it came to be on tonight's agenda. It's on the agenda exactly because we conduct our business in a transparent, open, and public forum. We present, we listen, react, and when we think we've adequately parsed an issue, only then does your elected board take action through a vote. What we try not to do is to put forth topics for public review before they are ripe. It's the job of village management, the board, and I to vet ideas and not waste anyone's time on non-starters. Nearly every week, I'm engaged in a discussion with some developer, business, or resident that has a proposed project they wish to advance. Staff or I will give candid advice on whether the idea fits in Oak Brook and is worth pursuing. No one wants to waste time and money on non-starters and bringing every initial idea to the board for public deliberation. The current operator of our banquet facility came to staff last year with an earlier version of the proposal you're going to see tonight. Staff found the proposal intriguing and, in compliance with Open Meetings Act guidelines, informally presented it to each of the board members for preliminary feedback in September of 2024. The overwhelming feedback of the individual board members was that the project had a lot of merit, but the proposed size and scope of the project was too large, and the request for village financial participation was not acceptable. What you are now going to have before you this evening is the result of many months of work by Chic Chef and the village staff aimed at addressing each concern raised by elected officials in those prior informal discussions. In fact, they have worked to address each and every comment provided to them from those discussions, including scaling down the proposal to half of the originally proposed banquet capacity and a rework of the finances wherein the project is now proposed to be 100% privately funded. The plan with these revisions incorporated is what was being presented to the board and public for a full review. To be clear, the first time the board members have seen this updated proposal, including the proposed contractual terms, was in the board packet released on Thursday. Like many in this room and on this board, I have a number of questions and concerns, particularly around ensuring that the village is well protected. That's why we're here tonight, and that's why this process will continue until we believe we have a fully vetted proposal. Knowing that there's a lot to review, to be done, and questions to be answered, I will not be calling for a vote tonight, as I said. We will welcome your comments in a few minutes. With that said, I'd like to set the stage for the topic with some historical context. Paul Butler built and opened the Bath and Tennis Club in the 1960s as a private club that was open to residents and non-residents. My own family joined the club soon after its opening. The club included the pool, tennis, and the banquet facility, then known as the Pavilion, from its inception. In 1977, Paul Butler sold the 270-some-odd acre sports car complex to the village, including the club, at a cost of about $10 million. At that time, club facilities were barely 10 years old, and of course, they were still in great physical condition. Over the 48 years that the village has owned the sports core, it has seen many changes. Expansion of the golf course, 2 replacements of the golf clubhouse, the addition of the library, and unfortunately the salt barn, and at least 4 separate additions to the Bath and Tennis Clubhouse, enabling continued dining and banquet operations just as Paul Butler envisioned. While we have changed how the facility operated and who operated the facilities over the time the village has owned the club, the facilities have consistently failed to be financially self-sustaining on even an operating basis. Over much of that time, the village propped it up in several ways, including by selling portions of the land to offset losses, providing millions of dollars of direct subsidies from our general fund, and millions more of indirect subsidies, such as not adequately allocating village overhead to the club's profit and loss statement. In just the last year, we have improved finances to the point at the sports core where we can now more accurately allocate overhead charges to the club and other aspects of the sports core. Your current village board is very proud of its actions over the last couple of years that have vastly improved the operational profitability of the sports core, including the club. But while the club is now finally self-sustaining on an operational basis, we are still faced with the looming capital needs of an almost 60-year-old facility and pool. While the village poured millions into keeping the doors open at the club over all these years, it has not set aside any funds for the millions of dollars of expected repairs, replacement of the pools, tennis courts, tennis shelter, and clubhouse and locker room building. A study commissioned by the village in 2016 indicated that the clubhouse alone needed about $4 million of repairs to extend its life. Obviously, that's now a bigger number in 2025 dollars. A couple of years ago, we replaced the liner of the pool, but the pool structure itself is beyond its design life and could materially fail at any time due to its age. To understand the magnitude of that possibility, understand that Clarendon Hills voters recently approved a referendum to replace their Park District pool at a cost, I believe, of about $8 million. And all 8 clay tennis courts of ours are in need of a full replacement at an estimated current cost of about $100,000 each. While the deferred capital needs of the club have grown over the years, demographic changes in Oak Brook over the decades have seen resident utilization of the club decline. There are fewer children in Oak Brook today than there were decades ago. There are more pool and tennis options for families today, including, for example, the Midwest Club pool and tennis courts, more private country club options, more homes with their own pools, extensive pool, tennis, and recreational facilities at the Oak Brook Park District that didn't exist decades ago. And of course, children today are so engaged in so many more activities that a summer club membership doesn't always make sense for many of our families. As our resident utilization of the club dropped over the years, non-resident membership grew, largely because it's still a great facility and a fantastic deal. But unlike Clarendon Hills, our voters overwhelmingly voted no when asked via referendum in 2022 whether to invest about $2.5 million to make more immediate repairs to the B&T Clubhouse. That's a pretty good indicator that there's no appetite among our residents to foot the bill for a club that most don't use. That referendum led to the village ceasing to operate the banquet facility at the club internally, and instead going out to bid and finding the current operator. That change led us from a $200,000 annual operating loss on the banquet facility to a nearly $200,000 annual operating profit. So this all leads to the often debated philosophical question about the sports core and the club in particular. Should we, the village, be in the business of running this operation for the primary benefit of non-residents? Unlike Park District facilities, the club is not supported by any property tax, so it is solely because of higher non-resident fees that we can sustain operations for this crown jewel for our residents. And because of the hard work we've done to revitalize the club over the last couple of years, we have actually reversed the trend of declining resident membership. But after seeing an incredible 25% increase in resident membership last year, we still had less than 100 resident family members. For the village to consider significant reinvestment in these facilities, I believe we would need to see far greater utilization by residents. So we're at a crossroads. We need to either find a path forward where we can generate the funds needed to make the millions of dollars of capital investment that will be needed to sustain the club without, I believe, burdening our residents for that investment. Or we need to face the reality that the day may be approaching where the club will need to be shut down and potentially turned back into open space. So as we plot our path forward, we also need to envision how we can grow resident utilization. When people are looking to move to Oak Brook, will the club be a selling point? Will it contribute to strong property values? Can we get back to a point where the majority of members are residents, even though they pay less than non-residents? I think that with the right vision and execution, we can do so, if we decide we want to. And that vision starts with crafting a financial plan to perpetuate the club for future generations without asking Oak Brook taxpayers to pay for it, whether they were to pay for it through taxes, diverting general fund dollars, or even unwisely using sports core fund surpluses generated through other aspects of the sports core. I don't believe, based on my experience, that any of that is acceptable to our residents. So tonight's agenda item is really just a plan, an option. And I'm going to call this Plan A. Plan A involves the existing banquet operator willing to pay 100% of all repairs in the remodel, including building a new pool cafe, locker rooms, tennis shelter, and future building maintenance in exchange for an extension of the already existing license agreement, an investment by the operator estimated to be over $8 million. In addition to relieving the village of the burden of reconstructing all those facilities, the proposed terms would increase our rent, which would be expected to grow substantially. These profits could create the reserve fund needed for the looming replacement of the pool and the tennis courts, all without any burden on our residents or general fund. So I know that the plan mechanism may on its surface seem unconventional, but at its core, it's an alternative funding mechanism that achieves millions of dollars of reinvestment without utilizing village funding and at zero risk to the village. That is appealing and worthy of serious consideration. And it's a plan that is a result of extensive, thoughtful work done by our village management. As this board and our residents evaluate this plan, I want us all to understand that the reason I am calling this Plan A is because I've never heard anyone over the years come up with a Plan B other than shutting down the facility and turning it back into open space. So please, let's thoroughly evaluate and comment on this plan. I do welcome your thoughts and concerns, as does this entire board. But I also ask you honestly, if there's anyone that wishes to shoot down this Plan A, please help us offer a viable Plan B. And I get the fact that, as I said, one option for Plan B is shutting it down. But short of shutting it down, what's an alternative plan to preserve this facility for future generations? Village Manager Greg Summers is going to do an overview of the presentation. I know that the operator does not want to get embroiled in a political debate, and so he's elected to pull back on the proposal at this time. But for the good of all those in attendance and in furtherance of my comments, I'd like to ask Village Manager Summers to walk through what the applicant intended to present this evening, and then we can get into some discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, President Herman. I'm going to walk through a little bit of the history first, and then I am going to walk through what Chic Chef was proposing for the site. So we can talk about sort of, what did we acquire? How did we get to the point we're at today? And what is the proposal, or what is Plan A at this point in absence of a Plan B? So, as you had mentioned, in 1977, the village acquired the Sports Corps from founder Paul Butler. In that agreement to acquire it, it specifically noted purchaser may continue to operate and maintain the Sports Corps facilities and improvements now located thereon. So when we look at what was there, consider that, and we would say the bath, tennis, and the banquet operation were in existence in the late 60s and continued into our ownership. For those that don't know, that bath and tennis banquet facility that's there is not the original facility. The original facility burnt down in 1972, was rebuilt by 1975 with Paul Butler's daughter, Jory, running the facility at that time. In 1978, the village passed the first ordinance governing the operation of facilities known as the Sports Corps, and this is obviously why the Butler family was still around and actively engaged. In that agreement, operation, it specifically notes the clubhouse facility will be available for rental by members and non-members for private parties or events. That agreement set forth clubhouse rental, cleaning, kitchen, and catering fees. So everything that you would see if you went to rent a catering facility today. And then specifically noted, quote, persons renting the clubhouse facility for a catered meal or private party with catered food shall use a caterer who has been approved by the club manager. So that's sort of the history of what we took over, where we were at that point in time. To put that into an aerial photo, I apologize that it's blurry. Unfortunately, that's the way 1978 aerial photos looked. This is the Sports Corps the year after acquired by the village, the spring after, as a matter of fact. So this is essentially as-is condition that we acquired. You'll note the pools are in existence as they are today. 6 tennis courts, which are just off to the upper right of that photo. We're at 8 today. There's been as few as 6 and as many as 12 tennis courts. It points through its history. The banquet hall facility is there, then known as the Pavilion. The Circle Drive and the parking lot, which is actually at a different location, sort of off to the right there, you can see that it's what appears to be a gravel parking area at that particular point in time. The next aerial photo available to us, they didn't take them as often back then, is 1987. I've indicated here where you can see they've added a receiving and loading dock to the facility. 2 new restrooms were added, a men's and women's restroom on the eastern end of the building, a storage room, and now the paved permanent parking lot that resembles what we have there today. All of these improvements paid for by the village. In 1998, the next aerial photo that's available, we've added 2 additional restrooms for the kitchen area, as well as the one that currently serves tennis. 3 walk-in coolers were added to that end of the building, another storage room, an outdoor patio for banquets added to the upper right, and the pool patio that's used for dining today, the first iteration of that. Again, all of these improvements paid for by the village. In 2006, there were substantial renovations done to the facility. You can see there's a lot more indicated here. We've added the rear covered porch, the rear banquet patio, the saddle room, the enclosed porch area, the porte-cochere, the poolside cafe, and the trash area and receiving area has been expanded considerably. Again, paid for by the village. In 2019, this is part of the pool renovation. You can see the pool equipment area that was added to the back of the building. The rest of the pool equipment sits in the basement. The basement is no longer large enough to house the equipment that's required today to meet all the pool requirements. So that area is the fenced area in the rear if you've been around the back. Again, all those pool renovations paid for by the village. And those that remember that project didn't go particularly smoothly. So with that, I'm going to move on. That's sort of the history of the 4 additions that were done to the clubhouse over time to sustain the operation as needs and requirements and the scale of the operation changed. Many of those changes, there's some notes in the history that they were made, for example, by scaling up the operation, they were finally going to overcome the operating deficits by operating at a larger scale that generated more revenue. It never happened. For 46 years, it didn't happen. But there were attempts made. So in 2022, following that, and I think President Herman had touched on this as well, the village bid the banquet operations, reversing the $200,000 plus annual operating loss. Chic Chef was a selected bidder at that point in time amongst several bidders for the property. They're now generating a nearly $200,000 annual operating profit. And I say operating because we know that we are facing millions of dollars in required renovations to the facility, just repairs to sustain it, absent any kind of addition or modification to the facility. Just when we talk about roofs, mechanical systems, sprinkler system, the pools, the equipment, we're looking at upwards of $4 million. What Chic Chef was proposing was to extend their existing license agreement and to extend it for a period that basically covered the note. They were going to finance $8 million of renovation to the facility for the benefit of the general public. Of course, that took a longer license agreement to pay back what was essentially a 25-year loan to get there. So I know this is the first time you're seeing it. I'm going to have a larger slide here in a minute. What you're seeing here, though, the gray areas represent where the new building would sit. So the white areas are parking and patio expansions. So those are all grade level surface expansions. They don't add to the vertical massing. They include 120 new parking spots to the east of the existing parking between there and the existing south tennis courts. They also remove the existing poolside cafe to create better visibility between the pool and the beach in the rear. Right now, you kind of have to walk around it. And certainly, if you've been out there, you know there's a lot of elevation changes, grade changes that you got to walk up and down ramps or stairs to get there. And there's 6,000 square feet of renovation proposed exclusively for village uses, having nothing to do with their catering operation. Those include a new poolside cafe, a new sheltered dining area, which is more open to the pool deck. You won't have to leave the pool area to go to there and come back in. 3 new locker rooms. That may seem like an odd number, but that's a new men's locker room, a new women's locker room, and for those with young children would appreciate a family locker room. A new poolside check-in and manager's office. So we currently have no manager's office. They come and go from the check-in hut. The check-in hut, if you've been out there recently, you will see is experiencing some rot at the base of the building. It's not long. We've got to figure out what to do with that. A new tennis shelter. If you've been out there recently, you know that there's probably more caulking than wood left on that facility. We have been trying to lengthen its life while we figure out what to do with that particular building that we know needs to be replaced, and 2 new tennis restrooms. Currently, there's 1 tennis restroom, which it's a unisex restroom, and it is definitely at the point of obsolescence. So moving in a little bit more detail, and it's probably very hard to make out in extreme detail, there is some removals of the existing building, there's some maintenance some maintaining of the existing facility, and some new construction to replace those removals. So we've heard about, I've heard out in the community how massive this new addition is. So we asked them to prepare this overlay showing how nominal the footprint increase really is, and that almost all of the new expansion is for those village uses that I just ticked through. So the orange and the blue represent the existing building footprint. The blue is the areas that will be removed. Pink represents the existing storage yard. I should check what color you guys see on the screen. So the orange is, I guess, the lighter pink, and the darker pink is what I'm referring to as pink, is the existing storage and receiving and trash yard. The gray is existing surface improvements, including the drive, the pool, the deck, sidewalks that are out there. Yellow is the existing rear patio for the facility, and the green is the existing pool equipment enclosure area. So you can see there's, to one end of the building, there's some nominal additions. It really envelops what today is the receiving yard, puts all of that behind a wall, and a taller wall than the fence that's out there in much better condition, much more incorporated into the building. seeking to screen that because it's really the front of the building. If you've been out there, that's where the trash is, it's where the receiving is. It's not a particularly attractive area, and those from tennis to pool have to walk right around it. And then to the west, so this is what it's proposed to look like. And I'll give you some context on what you're looking at. So the upper left is approaching the circle drive. That's the circle directly in the center. You can see the porte-cochere replaced by a lighter porte-cochere that's a little bit smaller, not so overwhelming to the building. In the center on the top, the new office entry. Those, today to get to the offices over there for the catering facilities, you have to go through the banquet hall entry space. This would incorporate a separate entrance to that area to allow them to operate while events were going on. In the upper right, the new sheltered poolside cafe and those kind of terraces coming down to meet the existing deck. There's a grade change, but if you're aware, between where the road sits and the pool deck. So that's the stepping down to meet the pool deck. Directly open to the pool deck, no going out through the fence to come back in, which helps with some control and access issues, checking in a number of times, those kind of things. The lower left would be the newly expanded pool deck. So again, that entrance to the left, that tunnel that's open, that's the new entrance tunnel. And to the right, that's where the cafe and those steps sit from the other picture. In the middle, at the bottom, that's the new clubhouse entry. You can, again, see that new lighter porte-cochere. That is the existing building sitting behind there. You can see that existing roof line looks familiar, and I'll show them side by side later so you can get a better context. And to the lower right, that would be the new pool entry. So the taller with the roof on top, that's the office entry. The entry to the left would be the new pool entry. Roughly in the vicinity of the same entry today, but more of a controlled entrance tunnel under shelter where we could check people in. Chic Chef also prepared some renderings of the new locker rooms. Obviously, again, men's, women's, and a private family locker room. We'd previously applied for a grant to do these. We did not get the grant, but when we did that study and applied for that grant, the cost estimate just to remodel the existing locker rooms was $1.4 million. I think it's important to note that while this is an $8 million plus project, the most expensive areas of this building, the kitchen for the poolside cafe, the locker rooms, the restroom for tennis, those are actually the most expensive spaces of the building. More than half of his budget was proposed to be spent on village improvements. So the question really becomes, and here's the side-by-side image. You can see where the existing building remains. The roof gets reclad because, again, we have some roof leaks at the existing facility. We have done some work on it, but we seem to be fighting an uphill battle as they constantly keep reoccurring for us. The question becomes now, what's next for the sports core? President Herman noted that our changes over the last 3 years have moved the Bath and Tennis from operating losses to self-sustaining on an operating basis only. We are not generating enough money for capital replacement. If that pool is going to cost between $5 and $10 million, and it absolutely is, to replace, and it's beyond its design life, where are we going to generate $10 million over the next several years? We know we need $4.8 million of capital repair to the facilities today. Repairs, and that doesn't include the replacement of the pool that I just mentioned at between $5 and $10 million. So the question we're left with, and this gets to the plan A versus is there a plan B? How do we fund a multi-million-dollar replacement of a 60-year-old facility, including the pool, tennis, and banquets, without dipping into golf profits, without dipping into the general fund, without a property tax levy? You know, how can we get somebody else to bring that proposal forward? So this is the first presentation of this proposal. We know there's a lot of questions. There's certainly a lot of protections that have to be built in for the village. And I'm going to hand it back now to President Herman with that information.
Thank you. Well, sorry about that. Thank you very much for that presentation. I know that, you're seeing some visuals, and some of you may react in different ways. I've had some discussions over the last couple of days with some of the people in this room. Some people say they don't like the way it looks, this and that. All fair comment. I think we've got bigger issues to kind of focus on. That has to do with the major issues we've raised about the future of the club and how we fund it. But this is your meeting, and now we're going to open it up for public comments to take your comments on these issues. I know there's a long list of people who want to speak, so I am going to ask you that if you have heard someone already make similar comments, consider abbreviating your comments and just saying you agree with what was said by a prior speaker. But with that, would you call up the comments, please?
Jenna McMahon.
And when you come up, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jenna McMahon. I am actually a resident of Clarendon Hills. However, I grew up in Oak Brook and lived in Oak Brook for over 30 years. I plan on moving back to Oak Brook in the near future. I also grew up going to the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis. It's a very special place to me. As you're aware, there's multiple school districts in Oak Brook, and the Oak Brook Bath and Tennis was really the community for the community to gather, and that's where I met a lot of lifelong friends, which is why I'm grateful that Paul Butler deeded this land to the village, and even more grateful that he knew to put restrictions in the deed to maintain the land's integrity and protect the community. The deed explicitly restricts any alterations to the land unless you are adding more pathways, expanding the golf course, or building sport, fitness, and recreational facilities, and other public purpose facilities. The deed restricts splitting up the land or selling any part of it separately. This is to ensure that the land remains a cohesive entity for the public enjoyment and the ecological preservation. Leasing the clubhouse to a privately operated banquet hall funded for profit is in direct violation of the deed. A very large banquet hall would undermine the intended use of the land and disrupt the character of the area, which includes the community pool, the fishing pond, the beach, and the tennis courts. This banquet hall poses a significant infringement upon the spirit and the very purpose of Paul Butler's intention. This will also greatly increase vehicle traffic. It's going to crowd the parking area. It's going to limit the intended use of the land. For example, patrons, including children, are not allowed to play on the beach, go kayaking, or even fish during these banquet hall events. That's what happened to my kids last year on multiple occasions. The land is meant for the benefit for the entire village. This is not just for one individual, and it is most definitely not for an individual profit. As elected members of the board, your duty is to serve this community and to follow the letter of the law, which would be the deed. The community would be better served if our funds were used to maintain and update the pool, improve and maintain locker rooms, build up the tennis program, which, by the way, we live in a big tennis community, and it's really a shame that the tennis courts just sit there. Those courts are beautiful. They're clay courts, they're very unique, and for some reason, we can't get those up and going. It would also be great to host and create summer camps for children, for our community, and their working parents. And the clubhouse has the potential of being a vibrant community hub that offers intimate dining and social events for all ages of the community.
Can I
Which would
interrupt you?
keep it within the spirit of the deed.
Can you wrap up, please? We've got a
And-
3-minute limit. We got a lot of people that want to speak and a
Yes.
lot of board members that want to speak.
And I would just leave it at is if we can't keep this within the spirit of the deed, then injunctions would end up having to be filed.
All right. Thank you very much. The next speaker?
Jacqueline Petrovich.
I actually agree with Jenna, so I don't need her to speak.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Ray Cheska.
Hi, I'm Ray Cheska. In 1954, when I was 13 years old, I was asked to work in a social or a local roadside stand. My first entry into the catering food business. I never left the industry and am still involved now in my senior years. I have been involved in every aspect of the food value chain from farm to fork, including the technology behind the research that allowed us to grow more crops and transport them safely. You have probably benefited from that work in the food you ate tonight for dinner. It is wonderful. It is a wonderful industry that has a myriad of risks associated with it because we are dealing with the consumer and the safety of the food that we eat. So I would say with assurance that I have seen it all from small mom and pop operations to giant conglomerates. I was recently made aware of an ordinance you will be discussing tonight about a catering company that wants to utilize our precious Bath and Tennis Clubhouse to run a catering business. I did not get the chance to review the proposal in depth to comment on it, but the speakers before me or after me will lay out their own thoughts. You are aware that over half of the catering businesses do not last more than a few years, primarily because of the high liability and operational risks. It just takes one case to tarnish and destroy their business and reputation. Jack in the Box is a case in point where their E. coli contaminated beef patties killed 4 children and affected 732 people, of which 178 had permanent injuries like kidney and brain damages. Brown's Chicken or Chi-Chi's and Bon Vivant Soup Company are other similar examples. One thing we should always remember in that though the suppliers of the ingredients to these branded companies who supplied the tainted food are not held to the same impact as the brand itself. The brand closes their doors and loses their reputation, and the suppliers continue on. If something goes wrong with the establishing of a catering business, guess who is the brand in this case? Oak Brook Village, where we pride ourselves on the safety of our residents and community. I have seen too much to justify a facility in our residential play space.
Ray,
It should be,
we always learn from you, but we've got to keep you to 3 minutes.
so I just, yes, so that I would ask you to table the ordinance to give us the opportunity to analyze the impact it will have on the community and how it benefits Oak Brook residents, and make suggestions for another more appropriate location, maybe alternative C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Karen Bushy.
Want us to bring a microphone up to you? Would you like us to bring a microphone up to you? Yeah, we'll bring a microphone to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your accommodation. That's very kind of you. My name is Karen Bushy. I've had the privilege of living in Oak Brook since 1973. And one of the most important things for me was that Paul Butler was my dear friend. He had dinner at my house quite frequently, and I was privileged to have dinner in his home just as frequently. And as part of that friendship, got to be part of the discussions that led to the acquisition by the village of the Oak Brook Sports Corps. There was a lot that went into it, certainly more than the 3 minutes here have time to share, but I think at some point is worth knowing about. And I think one of the most important things is why he sold it in the first place. His son, Michael, wanted to build almost startlingly what you've put up there, and Paul about had a heart attack. He said, that's just not what this is all about, and that is what actually prompted him to complete the deal and sell. We were sitting in the chart room at the GHQ, and that's how that all happened. I think, just for me personally, seeing the slide that showed building on a legacy and a picture of Paul and Polo, what you're putting up there is not legacy. That is an insult to Paul and everything he stood for. It may be what people want to do, but please don't confuse that with the legacy of Paul Butler, because that's just not a factual thing. I think it's worthwhile to note that the heritage of Paul is so much what made this village what it is, what made you want to invest here, whether it was to live, to work, or both. And that was the courage that he had when he, with his employees, worldwide companies, with his family, telling his son Michael, so many words, what he could do with his bright idea. That was quite a night. Or with the people who chose to invest and live here in the village of Oak Brook. One quote that he about burned into my head was that there will always be change. And he wiggled his finger at me and he said, but your job is to see to it that you manage that change for the benefit of the people of the village of Oak Brook. He said, and sometimes it takes a lot of courage. I'm here to tell you tonight that in my view, the smartest thing to do would be to knock down the Bath and Tennis Club. The time is over when that is going to be what, you can't make it what it was when Paul was here, when in those early years when we all enjoyed having our kids there. That time is gone. And just as the International Arts Center that he had planned, which probably you don't know about, he had the courage to walk away from it. And I think even though I was part of the committee that helped acquire the sports score, we worked hard at it, but we made a commitment to the people of Oak Brook. And I think right now is the time for the board to have the courage to take a look at it and say, it's time for it to come down. It's done. And the land needs to be what it was intended to be. And it's hard. It's hard to say that. But that's the job. That's the job Paul gave the elected people here. He said, have the courage to face what's good for the people of the village of Oak Brook. And managing a facility that's just limping along and being a profit center for somebody that has no love for the land is not a way to sustain it. So my vote would, if were I to be voting, if you want to keep the pool and maybe a little changing house for people, if you want to do that, fine. But to run a banquet facility of this magnitude and gobbling up that much property and all, that's not what this is for.
Thank you for your comments.
Have the courage to do the right thing.
Thank you for your comments.
Ann Huber.
Why did I say
I gotta pull this up. Good evening, my name is Ann Huber. Our family's been a resident of Oak Brook for more than half a century, just like Karen. Every time we talk about the OBBT, it's deja vu all over again. It's the same issue. We always talk about the same thing. It's the same arguments. Tonight, I'd like to read from you the deed, which was mentioned before. Grantee, which is the village, covenants that all the real estate hereunder shall be kept, maintained, and preserved substantially in its present state, 1977. No further structures or improvements of any kind shall be erected or permitted on the land, provided, however, that you can put in bicycle trails, bridle paths, the expansion and redevelopment of the golf course, or the installation, erection, and construction on behalf of the village, sports, other recreational, flood control, stormwater management, or other such public purpose facilities. This covenant runs with the land. This is not allowed. This proposal, very interesting. We've seen a lot of those sort of ideas. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. I will further read from the deed. It is the express intent of the grantor that the agreement and the agreement of grantee, again, which is the village, that the real estate shall be preserved as one whole parcel for open green areas, natural wooded areas, sports, recreational, flood control, storm management, and other public use. You can't put a banquet facility like that here. You just can't. Furthermore, the enforcement of this runs in equity and at law and is enforceable by any resident, commercial, or personal of the village. And I will commit to you today that if another proposal like this is put forward, as long as I am a resident of Oak Brook, I will fight it. And I'm pretty sure the people here will fight it also. And we have, frankly, the degrees, the licenses, the money, and the time to fight it. If repairs to the pool, which will be between, 5 and 10 million, I get that, and repairs to the building, which are 4.5 million, if they're too burdensome to the village, I agree with Karen. And it saddens me greatly also to say that. It should be preserved as a nature conservatory. Nature bathing is supposed to be so great for us. The deer and all the animals need a place to go. We should maintain the nature area, which is consistent with the deed and also complicit with law. And I agree.
Thank you, Ann.
Take it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Natalie Capetta here?
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
I'm not used to being on the side. Good evening, Natalie Capetta. A lot of what was said is things I have in my, always me, sorry. How about now? Okay. A lot of what was said is things that were in my notes, but I have a few points, some very on point, some slightly off. If this was an item for discussion only, why did we pay our village attorney to draft a 4-page ordinance? Why did we spend that money if this is the first time anybody was talking about a matter of this magnitude that is kind of obviously a hot-button issue for our residents? As we finish a very vocal election season where transparency was such a large part of many discussions, from a resident point of view, item 8A10 feels less than transparent. While it may meet the minimum requirements of notice, we expect more than the minimum in Oak Brook. I would ask that the descriptions of future agenda items be more descriptive to give residents a better understanding of what is being discussed or voted upon. Item 8A10 is about the bath and tennis. And I believe the bath and tennis is a matter that, again, is a rather hot-button issue. To be more transparent, that item should have included the words bath and tennis or something other than just an ordinance number. This ordinance and all of them. It is difficult for our residents. This was a 415-page agenda packet. For the residents to go through to find that item, to see what that's about, is not fair to the residents and not reasonable. You guys could make it so much easier to just give us a little bit of information so we know what you guys are going to talk about. Somebody said that we don't have a reserve. I think it was Greg. And I'm about to say, shame on the village. Shame on all of us. If we don't have a reserve for this, what else don't we have a reserve for? What else is going to come down the pipeline and we're going to say we don't have the money for? Let's figure out what we don't have reserves for, and let's start to set them up and find the money. Somebody also said it's zero risk to us. It might have been Larry. It's never zero risk. If we agree to do this and this man loses his funding, if he dies the day after he starts, if something falls off and the building gets half torn down, we, the village, are stuck with it. So it's not zero risk. There's always something. If he's going to get an $8 million loan, is there going to be any lien on this property? Or is he getting the $8 million secured by somewhere else? If it's secured by someplace else, then that part doesn't affect us. If there's any lien on our property, that's a concern. Why can't we use the golf profits to help support the rest of the sports core? If it's making money, why are we parsing it? Why is this not just one large thing? If Chic Chef didn't want to deal with this little bump of questions from us and wasn't here to do this, what happens when there's a bigger bump in the future? Does he bail on us too? Does he leave us with half a building? Thank you.
Next,
Tony Canino.
Oh, it's me. Good evening, Tony DeCanio, 40 years, almost in Oak Brook on Madison Street. Thank you for this opportunity. A little bit simpler approach. We hear about billions and trillions of dollars on TV every minute, so 8 million is just a mere bag of shells. But where is it coming from? Who's responsible for paying it back? And who's responsible for determining how it's going to be used? I have a Plan A addendum. Since we have such a generous benefactor, why doesn't he make the pool and bath and tennis available to every Oak Brook resident free of charge? And I do have a Plan B, Mr. President. I don't know if it's possible. I have no idea if how to do it or who could do it. But why don't we convert the golf club and the bath and tennis into a semi-private country club available to Oak Brook residents and outside people, and use the funds generated from that to make the improvements we're talking about and manage the day-to-day operations. Thanks for your time. I'd really like to know where that $8 million is coming from, and more importantly, how it's going to be paid back. So thank you.
thank you. Next speaker.
1 minute.
Chrissy Dolan.
Hi, I'll be quick. First of all, I'm on the Sports Core Committee, and,
Christie, would you speak into the microphone, please?
yes, sorry, like this? Thank you. Okay. I'm on the Sports Core Committee, and we'd like you to know that it's open anytime for anyone to come and join us. They're not private meetings, so please come. It's not fun, but it's kind of fun. I've been a resident here for 3 decades, and I love the Sports Core. I want you to know that the Sports Core, I did not know, and I've never missed a meeting on the Sports Core. I did not know any of this was going on until I got a call from a trustee. So transparency would be nice. And lastly, this morning someone said that they wanted to put asphalt and more parking in the Sports Core. And I would just ask our trustees not to do that until something has been decided on this. There's so much black over there now. Let's keep it green. Let's make it what it was meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment?
Nada Ivanek. Nada Ivkovic, Ivkovic. You don't want to speak? Okay. Mike Scheid. Scheid, sorry.
Please come to the microphone.
Try to be brief here as well. I live in the town, grew up, and my grandmother's in the town, so I'm very familiar with the park facilities and the various wonderful green spaces we have and so forth. I have taken my children to the pool facilities there over the years, and we've had some fun, and I just kind of more of like a numbers person, and, you know, the whole 200 grand negative to a 200 grand positive. I'm wondering, you know, is there another party that should be paying millions of dollars a year to lease the facility and do a better job with the banquets? And, you know, do we really have a partner that's going to maximize the profits if we're going to take this tremendous risk of having weddings next to a pond and all the other elements that, you know, go into this type of a venue? There's already a lot of other wedding venues in the town that some have experienced some of these insurance issues over the years, and I'm kind of cautious of the liability that we expose ourselves to having people at these wedding things that even restaurants simply have security problems. And so is this operator going to have enough security, enough insurance to take a $100 million death lawsuit or something, or does the buck end up with the village? And, you know, is the risk worth the reward? Is there not a different way to pay for this? As I was sitting there, I was kind of looking at the map and everything here, and maybe another option C, option D, would be to put a outside pool at the other facility and just remove this part and return it to Parkland. It seems the other main sports core modern facility, what are we calling it? What is it? With the baseball fields and everything over there, the other kind of more modern facility, there's got to be a little bit of room somewhere there to put a swimming pool outside there, and maybe that would be the best use of $10 million, $8 million, rather than trying to patch up the older pool facility and kind of turn that into something again. That's just my thoughts on the issue, and I kind of in favor of not proceeding, I guess, and
Thank you.
maybe returning it to how it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Elaine Zanis.
Hi, I'm Elaine Zanis. I live at 150 Briarwood, and you probably already know that, so. All right, so I was a village trustee for 2 years, for 2 terms, 2 non-consecutive terms, and I was passionate about the Bath and Tennis and the sports core. It's hallowed ground. It's hallowed ground amongst our citizens. They don't want to see it disturbed. And what's even more upsetting to them is when they find out that there's conversations being held and they weren't invited to attend, listen, or even know about it. And that's why I'm here today, is to say we got to do better with communications. I understand you have to have conversations to explore thoughts, and that some of those you don't want necessarily roaming around town. But you've got to have some kind of a committee that these people can call, somebody they can call and say, what is going on with Bath and Tennis? What is going on with the Park District? And I'm sorry, I take that back. What is going on with the sports core? What's the story today? Because we don't always get the story from you. Certainly you don't call us proactively. And when we come to meetings like this, we don't know what we're going to, we don't know when to come. So, and more importantly, we've got a sports core advisory committee that should know what's going on. They've got to vet these things as well. Why can't one of those members be a part of your table? So I'm here to say we got to have transparency. We have to have enthusiasm. We have to have, you know, Michael Scheid. What a great idea. What an absolutely great idea. And he brought it to you here. If this meeting wasn't here, if all these residents were here, would we have heard that? Would you have ever called Michael Scheid and say, hey, Mike, you got any ideas? So, more transparency, more representation from the community, and you've heard it all before. Let's not ruin what we've got. Let's not ruin the gem of DuPage County. Thanks.
Lou Kelly? I'm not sure if it's Lou. I can't read the handwriting. Lou Keely, Kiily. Okay. I'm going to skip you and go to Jim DePhillips.
Good evening. I'm Jim DePhillips, and I'm a resident of Saddlebrook, but compared to these people, I'm a newbie. I've only been here 15 years. I'll let the others argue the legality of this proposed changes to the sports core deed and the wishes of Paul Butler. But the Bath and Tennis Clubhouse has operated for the last several years as a commercial venture, not as an amenity for the residents of Oak Brook. The pool and the tennis courts are amenities. When the Long-Term Strategic Planning Committee, which I was a member of, analyzed the clubhouse operations in 2019, none of the 66 weddings, the biggest revenue producers, were actually booked by residents of Oak Brook. None. I would bet that statistic hasn't changed much, if at all. Additionally, this facility is in direct competition with 7 major hotels in Oak Brook that offer wedding packages. The latest issue of Oak Brook Magazine has a full-page ad promoting these 7 hotels. The village should not be competing with businesses in Oak Brook. These hotels also pay a hotel tax to the village, which is used to promote tourism to Oak Brook and provide funds for beautification projects. The clubhouse, as far as I know, does not pay that tax. Why are we competing with them? If Schick Chef has determined that they need to expand in order to stay competitive, now is a good time for Oak Brook to get out of the banquet hall business completely. The business is in need of major repairs, so we should be looking at ways to rehab the building, to improve the facilities tied to the pool and tennis operations, both of which are the true amenities for the residents. With improved facilities, there could even be increased utilization and increased revenue. Why not pursue that? 2 years ago, the residents of Oak Brook overwhelmingly voted no to a referendum asking if the village should spend $2.8 million to upgrade the clubhouse so it could consider operating as a banquet hall. Approving a plan to allow a vendor to spend much more than that is fraught with potential issues in addition to the legality question. Please step back and review the pros and cons of this project, and then listen to the voice of the residents. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
That's it? Okay. Thank you for all your comments. You've been heard loud and clear. I want to just make a couple of observations in respect to some of the comments, because this will come up. You know, we often talk about what did Paul Butler intend? What would Paul Butler want? I didn't perhaps know Paul Butler as well as former President Bushy did, but I was around when he was here. Granted, I was a lot younger. The first sentence of this deed says that by its acceptance of this deed, grantee covenants that all the real estate shall be kept, maintained, and preserved substantially in its present state. Its present state was a pool, a tennis facility, and a banquet facility. I used to see Frank Butler come hang out there all the time when I was hanging out there, right? So would Paul Butler want that continued? Or would he be a pragmatist and say, it's served its time, as many people have suggested tonight? I don't know, but I think there's different opinions. But I think in all the comments I've heard tonight, you can start to understand the challenges that we as a board have to try and thread the needle and figure out what's right for the village. Because I've heard several people say, its time has passed, get rid of it. That very well may be the plan B. I don't think there's anyone on this board that, if that's what the community wants, is going to try and advocate for something different. We've got a job to do to figure out what this community wants to see happen. I've heard some other comments about, well, do this instead of that. And I'm just going to tell you, as we've tried to articulate tonight, believe me, we know the numbers. There is no way that you're going to get rid of the banquet facility and be able to sustain the pool and the tennis operation with all the looming capital. And I come back to that Clarendon Hills thing. Someone said that you live in Clarendon Hills. I mean, you're probably a lot closer to that debate than I was. That's never going to pass in Oak Brook. So your board has some challenges. And I would be the first to agree that we're not here to have commercial activity on our sports core to generate funding to preserve a club that is used predominantly by non-residents. That makes no sense. So as I said in my introductory comments, we have to decide as a village, is this something that we want to perpetuate for the primary benefit of residents? Right? That's some soul searching we have to do. And it's very clear that we've got our work cut out for us to figure that out. I want to hear from our trustees and their comments. We will figure out how to gather all this input. It may well be that we send this back to the Sports Core Committee to start to do the research to figure out what the community wants. And if it turns out that the majority of the community really does want to preserve this, then the really hard work is going to have to follow that, and that is to figure out how do we do it. Because this proposal that we have here tonight, like it or not, is by far the best thing we've identified to continue this. This has been a problem. There's people here who have been around a long time. This is not a new topic. The only difference is that no one's ever addressed it. Just like we had the perennial losses at the sports core, particularly the Bath and Tennis Club, which thankfully we finally changed the direction on that. So, good discussion by all of you, thank you. And now I want to ask our board members to offer their comments and questions. I'll start with Melissa Martin as a liaison to the sports core and actually an active user of the club.
Yeah, that was kind of where I wanted to start. I'm so grateful for all of you to come out tonight and lend your perspective, particularly on the history that not all of us, and particularly not me, have been privy to. I will say, I think I'm the only member of the village board who regularly uses the Bath and Tennis. I also look in the audience and don't know many of your faces from being there regularly. I see a few neighbors who use it regularly, not many. It's a great facility that I'm actively involved in using. It is a great benefit to the residents. It was mentioned earlier, but there are so many different places our kids go to school, and having one central place where we can all come together as neighbors in Oak Brook is such an important part of our community. Some of you may be less attached to it in its current state because you haven't been using it this regularly. It's a great community building asset, and it really makes me sad to think that we would lose that asset. I do think that the proposal that is existing does provide some great benefits to Oak Brook in terms of renovations to the facilities that the residents regularly use, the tennis, the pool, the locker rooms, which I think are fantastic benefits to the proposal, but I do think there are significant costs to the proposal as well, many of which you have outlined here tonight. And I think there's much work to be done to determine whether the costs exceed the benefits. But to say there are no benefits to the residents, I think is a little disingenuous. Whether or not they exceed the cost is still a question, I think, to be debated. I would also like to say, just to make it quite clear, I haven't been doing this for a long time, as many of you know. I do know that in my time, my couple of years on the board, there have been multiple times where we have done, in order to not violate the rules around village board and meetings, we've done one-on-one or two-by-two meetings with different potential ideas for developers, for improvements, for industries to come in. And sometimes they result in nothing ever coming back to the village board. We did this in September. We heard a proposal which was never going to fly. We made many of the same comments that you guys are making tonight about the footprint, about the traffic, about the look of the building, about the use for the residents, about the funding model. So many different comments. And we were told it would be many months before we heard back again. We didn't hear a single thing. I didn't hear a single thing until it came on the agenda on Thursday. So again, I don't think it was intended to blindside anyone, but I do think it was intended to be an important point of discussion. Oak openly with the committee, with the community. A couple of other things I just wanted to comment about that were raised tonight. I just want to make it clear that it is currently being used as a facility that is being operated by a third party, much like our golf cafe, much like we run tennis, much like we run soccer. And so I just want everyone to make sure that's really clear in your mind, and to the idea that we could maybe have someone wanting to come in and make millions instead of hundreds of thousands. We sent it out for proposal, and a very, very open proposal that said, what can you make of this facility? Doesn't need to be a banquet facility. We talked about putting golf simulators in there. We talked about a number of different options that could have happened in the facility, and this is what we got back. This was the best option that we got back. We knew that it would make the village money on a loss-making entity, and this was what the village board at the time agreed to. So I just want to make that very clear to everyone. The other point I really want to touch on before I turn it over is Elaine's communication and enthusiasm. I'm incredibly enthusiastic about the sports core and about the Bath and tennis in particular. And if you've come to a sports core meeting, you know that. The problem is many of you don't come to a sports core meeting. And so I want you to be engaged. We want you to be engaged. I have repeatedly asked the community in my time, my 2 minutes at the end of all of these meetings, to please become engaged in the community. We can't, it's infeasible for us to go out to you with every potential idea that comes, but if you are willing to engage with us, if you're willing to come to this sports core meeting and understand what's happening at the sports core, understand the changes we're making to golf, the difficult financial decisions we're having to make, that's going to make us better as a village, right? That's the communication that we need. We need you guys to be willing to engage with us in the discussion, to show up and to be part of all of the daily minutia so that when these big issues come up, you're informed enough to help us make the right decision. Right? So please, I implore you again, I want you to communicate with us. I want you to do it in the channels that we have available and to come up with other ideas for channels that really help us stay engaged with you. So please engage in the communication, especially relative to the sports core, because that's going to be really important for us. And then just two other things, because I'm so passionate about the sports core. We have a new tennis pro that we've had in for a very short amount of time, who is fantastic. I have been pushing for years to engage in summer camps at the sports core to really bring the sports core together in terms of golf and tennis and soccer and the pool. And we haven't had the bandwidth. We haven't had the profitability to explore any of those options. And we're finally at a place where those options are on the table because we can sustain the operating expenses of these different entities. So again, please get engaged with us and help us decide on the future of the sports core and where it goes. Thank you. Sorry that was long.
I just want to tag on to your last comment. Thank you very much for those thoughtful comments. At the end, Melissa was talking about the new tennis pro. One of the things that we are actively working on, and thank you to Director Segura and Assistant Village Manager Joe Mitchell, who poured their heart and soul into the sports core. We are working hard at increasing the programming, particularly for the younger generation, the kids in this village. We've identified, how can we create camps that tie in golf to tennis to swimming and so forth. Someone mentioned before, I can't remember who it was during comment, about we've got 5 different elementary school districts in this town, and this is one of the facilities, like our park district, that is open to all and helps unite people from different parts of our community. Many of you know I've been passionate about community engagement and trying to bring these people together. So I think part of the discussion is going to have to be, as we reckon with what the future is to try and envision or understand, is there a demographic shift that we should be encouraging with these types of facilities and the programming we can do there? It's a thought, right? So this is something we have to consider. I want to move on now to our 2 remote participants. Trustee Tazinga, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still on.
We welcome you. Any observations or comments you have to make?
Well, I will try and keep them short because I think the audio may not be as good as Trustee Jane's audio. He's in India and I'm in Korea. So we're both addressing you from the future. It's Wednesday here. But I think we need the comments of our residents to help articulate that future. One of the themes that I think is very important is the idea of the reserve plan. Since being elected in 2015, I've been encouraging and demanding that we get reserve studies, not only for our public safety pensions, but for our buildings, for our roads, and for everything. And now we finally have it for the sports core. And this helps us avoid what other towns tend to do, which is called government by surprise. They always end up with not enough money, and now they need to borrow money, and now they need to raise taxes. So I think it's good that we're getting ahead of it. I'd like to focus on the deed, which is where Paul Butler kind of encoded the DNA of the sports core in legal amber, so to speak. And I know I've asked our village manager if our village attorney can prepare a opinion about the constraints that that deed does place on us. And so I would very much look forward to that. But I'd like to limit my comments to those things in view of the remote participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Jane, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, your turn.
Thanks, President Herman. Again, as Trustee Tizinga mentioned, I'm in India, so I apologize if the connection and the voice doesn't come through well. I have a lot to share. I think this is a very important strategic question for us as a board and as a village. And what I would like to submit is this is the first time I've been asked the question. This is the first time as a board member I've been asked this question. And let me explain that. I've been on the board for 2 years. And yes, this is a very strategic question. We have had annual board meetings, we have budget meetings, we have anything. We have never, ever, as a board of trustee, even identified this as a question or discussed this question. So it was a big surprise. Yes, and let me take you through my experience as a board member on this topic. The first experience as a new board member on this topic was when we put the proposal in the board meeting on Shake Shack licensing agreement. And it was a phenomenal proposal. And if you look at the videos, I immediately approved it, and I've even made a commendation that is a great proposal, 15% of the revenue sharing, 10,000 rent, and we can have a great operating, at least we can start to be profitable from an operations perspective. And I approved it, and I even commended the team for doing that. While I rejected the golf one, I did that. The second interaction on this topic as a board member I had was in September. And when I had that interaction in September, the question was not, we need to evaluate the strategic question. It was a 10-page design document of all the facilities, all the design, looking at design, how do you like it, what do you think, and what is the question? So the strategic question of plan A, plan B, plan C, what is the dynamics around each plan has never been discussed as a board, never been raised as a board, and never been presented as a context to the board. So that was the second interaction. We gave some feedback, and I know, Greg, you were there, and I know Joe was there, Sheikh Chef was there. We discussed a lot of questions. There was no response to those questions till about 4 days back in India. I see this 100-page document, and with a note from Joe in the pending updates, and then the Sylvia, that this is part of the thing that we have. It already has everything in that document was presented in such a way as if we are voting for it, not discussing it. There was not a single mention of this as a discussion topic in any communication. I'm not talking to the resident, I'm talking to the board members. Last 3 days, I've had one-on-one calls with board members waking me up in the middle of the night. Everybody's stunned that this is happening. Everybody's stunned. So it's not only me, but it's everybody else. So the point I'm making is the process for us to even discuss, review, communicate strategic issues. I'm not talking about day-to-day 95% of the issues. Strategic issues is absolutely broken. It is not transparent. It is broken. And I'm sorry, it may hurt someone, but I am extremely candid about it. We need to change it. every time we talk about strategic issues, I get Open Meetings Act thrown on my face. The Meetings Act does not mean we cannot discuss these strategic topics openly between us as board members. We canceled the last board meeting 3 weeks back. We had time. We could have used that for this discussion. We had an open meeting discussion on the budget. We never raised this topic in the budget. I can't even answer this question as a board member as to what is the operating profit from the sports core, what is the 20-year model, and what will be the deficit cash flow that we need if we want to do that. This information has never been put together. We can't even discuss strategic options unless we share basic information and facts. So sorry, the long-winded, I'm just saying is we as a board, leave aside the resident, we can't even engage as a board to discuss strategic topics openly. And we do it figure out a process on a case-by-case basis. We did very well on the satellite site. We high-fived each other. But this one is a case study of how it should not happen. So let's learn from it as a board. Let's learn from it as a community. And it was not an efficient process, President Herman. It was the most inefficient process in my career I've ever seen. And I know I've shared this with Greg and Joe. On the topic itself, Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, we should share with the village some basic foundational information. If we can't answer the deep question, if there's no starting point, then why even start wasting the time? Secondly, we don't have any economic financial information. One of the trustees put on the social media yesterday that we make $200,000 from Bath and Tennis. And in the last 2 years, we've made $400,000. So how much money will we make out of sports core in 20 years? How much money capital do we need in 20 years? Has anyone put together a 20-year model of the sports core based on last two performance? I don't even know if we make $200,000 every year. Is that your true statement? So what I'm saying is, yes, we should discuss Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, but we have to put the facts on the table to see where's the deficit, how much money we have to raise. When is the spend coming on? We have 4.5 million cost avoidance. Is it all hitting next year? Is it going to hit after 10 years? How much, if I'm making $200,000 a year from the Bath and Tennis, how much money would I have till I need that cash flow? I have none of these questions to answer. As a board member, I don't have any data. Maybe some residents have it, but as a board member, I don't. So we are not even in the position to answer these questions because we don't even have the information to have a discussion on Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, point one. Secondly, I think mentioned about engaging with the sports core. I, as a trustee, cannot even engage with the sports core committee because the two liaisons from the sports core committee are there for last 2 years. I requested that, hey, let's rotate trustees so everybody get exposed to trade sports core, but that has not happened. Ed Tizinga, Nagel, others, me, I have requested, I cannot join that meeting because I'll violate the Open Meeting Act. So there'll be 3 trustees in the meeting. So this has, I know you are shaking your head.
That's not correct. You can attend the meeting. You can't participate in the meeting.
Yes. So I cannot engage with the sports core committee, Melissa. Sorry, I would love to. I have a lot of passion, but I can't even engage with them. So what I'm saying is, I think we should write to the Attorney General of Illinois and find out how we as a board can work within the Open Meeting Act, because I find this thing that we can't even discuss as a board. We can't address strategic issues. It's like tying my feet and everything and then throwing you in the water. So please, let's take this as a case study of how not to do things. Let's do it as a case study to figure out what 4 or 5% strategic issues we have as a board and as a community. If we address it in the proper place, it's a great opportunity for us to learn from this.
All right, I'm going to take my marching orders on the Open Meetings Act from our village attorney. But you certainly are welcome to contact the Attorney General and come up with an alternative solution as to how we conduct this stuff. So, thank you for your clapping for me, Elaine. So, Trustee Reddy.
Thank you, President Herman. As you know, OBB Bath and Tennis is a beautiful property located in the woods, and it's a very beautiful atmosphere to hold small events. The survival and restoration of the banquet facility is dear to many residents of the Oak Brook. It is also one of the major attractions to young families who come to Oak Brook. I'm a physician, I'll take a different approach to this one. I think as a patient in ICU. We have a plan A, and we are looking for multiple plans. And letting it die is not a plan, it's an endpoint. So that is always there. We can always withdraw the support and let the patient die. That's always there. That's not a plan. So we are here to get more plans, plan B, plan C, whatever you have. Like at the endpoint we already know, and that's been there for last 3-4 years. We have been struggling to not reach the endpoint and let the patient die. And we take marching orders from the residents, and I truly believe the best ideas come from the brainstorming of the residents. Thank you, residents, in presenting ideas, queries, suggestions, and resolutions, and guide us so our board can make the right decision going forward and make it into a country club type of premises fully owned by village, preserving the culture and pattern with extensive greenery and beautiful landscaping. That's very dear to me, extensive greenery and beautiful landscaping. Of course, any action taken will have to be cleared by our legal counsel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Nagel.
Thanks, President Herman. And before I get into the subject itself, I want to just say, it is kind of a pickle. Hey, what do we do? President Herman and Village Manager Greg Summers are working more for this village than any other community in DuPage County. So they are coming up. They've got we have a very tough issue, and I know Larry spends a tremendous amount of time on that, and I think we all appreciate that. He's done a phenomenal job alongside with Greg. Having said that, I'll be honest, I was a little surprised that the applicant wasn't here and a little disappointed. I think it was an opportunity for him. I've been on the board for 4 years. I remember when Mitch Goltz was here, he did the development Lazy Dog, and there were 40 residents screaming at him over an ATM machine. And if you think of all those applicants that are here, they're all here for their own property, the property that they own, and they have to face the fire. They have to answer all these questions. If he was here, it was up for a vote today, I had a lot of questions I would have liked to have asked him. And I think it was a real missed opportunity on his part. Having said all that, all of this, the money, how much we're going to make, how much we're going to lose, before we get to any of that, and let me share this story with you. I'm a third-generation attorney. My grandfather was an attorney. My father's 93. He's an attorney. My great-uncles on both sides of my family were attorneys. My uncles on both sides of my mother and father's side were attorneys. And when I graduated from law school, all of those that were still alive, and I remember this so well, I was down at the IIT campus. They took me aside right after I got my diploma and said, hey, just remember this. If you want to go through and have a successful career for you and your clients, all you have to do is follow the law. And for the 23 years that I practiced law, it was great advice. It kept me out of problems. I never had a problem with the ARDC, the Attorney Registration Disciplinary Commission, and I can say my clients were always very well represented. So before we do anything on this analysis, the first question is it lawful? Either we're a city of laws or we're not. And we don't have to think of what Paul Butler said back then or what his intentions were. We have it in the deed. And the deed is extremely clear. This is absolutely 100% not allowed. Now, Melissa and Suresh, you brought up some points last time, and we really didn't have time to talk about it, but you said, but we've had this use before. We've had the use before. So I want to address that specifically to you two so you understand very clearly what we're talking about. The deed says, by the exceptions of this deed, the village grants that everything stays the same. And then there's an exception. And the exception is this. you can go ahead for the installation, construction on behalf of the village of sports, recreational, flood control, stormwater management, or other such public purpose facilities, or other such public purpose facilities. So the fact that they used this before as a banquet hall is irrelevant. Hold on, please, and I want to drive this point home because it's so important. Okay, Lifetime Fitness, you go there, you work out. You go to the pool, you play basketball. You can do the same thing at the Park District. So the question is Lifetime Fitness a public purpose facility? Absolutely not. It's privately owned, for profit. The Park District is. If you go to Butler National, you're on one side of Salt Creek, you're playing golf. On the other side, it's for the village. The definition of public purpose facility, and believe it or not, there's a federal statute, is a building, structure developed and used to serve the general public or fulfill a governmental or community need. These facilities are typically owned, operated, or funded by governmental entities or nonprofit organizations, and their primary goal is to provide a service or benefit to the public rather than to generate a profit. There's an other definition, here's the federal definition by statutes, says the same definition, then it gives examples. The examples are flood control, irrigation, sewage treatment, water supply, parks, educational, recreational purposes. If you look back to the deed, what are the other uses before they say other such public purposes? Sports, recreational, flood control, stormwater management. It was this section of the deed that allowed the village to build a library. A library is a public purpose facility. We had this issue come up, and this is where it's easy to point the finger and say, hey, you did this wrong, or you did this wrong. So I want to say, I want to be the first one. We always try to coach our team. When we screw up, when we play basketball, my bad. Here's where I screwed up. This gentleman came before us a year ago last December and petitioned us for this license agreement or lease. And it was like what some people said today. I looked at the deed, it didn't say sports court, the agenda didn't say this, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't do my homework. And so we had the discussion, but I knew, being a lawyer, that there was no way in hell that Paul Butler would ever allow a private business to work on the sports court. And having that feeling, I was the only one that voted against it. And I thought to myself at that time, well, shit, let him go. I'm not going to be the guy and be the skunk at the garden party. All the other people were all excited to put him in. And I think that was a big mistake on my part. And it wasn't until he came back later, it's kind of like the camel and tent technique. He got the tent and he got his hoof in the sports court. Now he wants, or in the tent, now he wants the whole camel in the tent. And he had this big proposal. And my answer was, heck no. And that's when I really started doing the homework. And I reached out to Karen Bushy. I said, there had to be a deed or something. And sure enough, there is a deed. And, the problem now is, and again, I understand the misconception when you thought, hey, he did it before. That's not the question. And why this is so important and why I screwed up, and this is on me. This is all of your land. By virtue of being a resident in Oak Brook, we get this unbelievable jewel. And if you took this logic and you let this to happen, in 5 years from now, another board is sitting up here and they're saying, hey, they played golf before. That's a recreational purpose. Let's put Top Golf in. We can make so much money. The only problem is it's absolutely illegal. And if there's any question that the deed is not valid, I had a title company look at it. The head of the title company that does this every day for a living, said absolutely the restrictions and the covenants run with the land, and they would never issue an insurance policy. And let me drive this point home. When the issue first came up and they were talking about, hey, maybe we put a banquet hall, I talked to Mike Manzo and I thought, hey, maybe this might be good for the Drake. Maybe I might be interested to go over there. And he said, don't do it, Jim, don't do it. We'll be crushed politically, just crushed politically. And knowing where it is now, if you gave it to me for free, I would have to say no. Because all it's going to result in is a lawsuit and money. And when I hear people talk about these deals, and I want to remind them of just down the street, we're going to make so much money. We got nothing to lose. The Village of Lombard, they had their city hall meetings, and I'm sure they were always very well-intentioned people, just like everyone here is. They want to do the best. And the developer came to them, it was Dave Bossy, it was Peter Fruman. Hey, we're going to make so much money, you're going to have this beautiful hotel. You guys got nothing to lose, nothing to lose. And you get your convention center. You know what the problem was? They never made a payment, and the Village of Lombard's credit went from AAA to junk. Or if you don't want to choose Lombard, ask any resident in Skokie what's going on. Again, very well-intentioned city aldermen or trustees. Hey, we need a hotel. We need a beautiful hotel in our town. And they reached out, and the developer came, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I got beautiful renderings. And it's after a $10 million TIF, the building is half-built, and the residents are furious. And the difference with those two and ours is those two were legal. This choice is simple. You can only put public purpose facilities. A banquet hall run by a private individual, for profit, is a direct violation of that. And I suspect to think, having done a lot of malpractice work and everything else, I don't think we are ever going to get a written opinion from any law firm that says this is a permissible use. All we have to do is look at the opinion from the title company that I already received. So again, I'm not pointing the fingers at anyone. I'm looking in the mirror, and I should have done my homework better. So that's not going to happen again. But as long as I'm on this board, I know Natalie Capetta's, I knew her father was a phenomenal lawyer. Natalie's a great lawyer. Ann Huber, Kirkland and Ellis lawyer. They're giving us sound advice. Sound advice. And I think we should listen to not only the lawyers that are residents, but I think we should listen to all of the people that took the time to come here to spend the whole night. I don't know what time, it's 9:13, everyone's still here because they're so passionate about it. And I really respect that passion, and it's been a pleasure representing you. Thank you for re-electing us. We will work very hard to make sure that we protect this jewel of the sports core that we have been entrusted with, which is why they call us trustees, to make sure that we follow the wishes of Paul Butler and all those residents that borrowed $10 million that had the foresight to buy this piece of property that enhances our lives, our property values, and is just a jewel that no other village has. So having said that, again, Larry, thank you. And Greg, I do appreciate the presentation. I know you put a lot of time into it. And I'm serious when I say this. We might not agree on everything, but with Larry and Greg and our staff, I really believe this. I think we have one of the finest village staffs and representation in town. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. I'm going to let Trustee Manzo comment. I just want to say a couple things. Unlike Jim, my father is not a lawyer. Unlike Jim, my grandfather was not a lawyer. But I'm one of the lawyers in this room. I wouldn't want to ever get into a litigation with Ann Huber. But listen, the fact is that we've got a lawyer right here that represents the village, and we've had a lot of analysis and discussion over the deed. And I just don't think it's fair for anyone to jump to a conclusion right now and say, you absolutely can or can't do this. It is not clear that you absolutely can't do it, all right? Now, having said that, I agree. I don't think if Sheikh Chef even wants to move forward with this, I don't think he wants to move forward with that if there's any doubt that the deed's going to restrict this or prevent it. He's not going to want to make that investment. So if, after all this, and we go through all the public input and discussion, and our sports work committee works on it, and we do a survey, and we decide, and we come to the conclusion that we want to preserve this jewel that is the Bath and Tennis Club, right? And the only way to finance it is through an arrangement such as what was presented, or is being presented. We're going to have to deal with this deed and address it. There's been a lot of analysis about it. I just want to remind you, that Paul Butler sold us this land, and he encumbered it with a deed that said you're going to continue using it the way it is. And the way he gave it to us, there was a banquet facility there being operated. And it was contracted out, at least at various points in its iteration. So, let's not get caught in absolutes about what can or what can't be. I think where we need to be focused on is what we want to happen, and be realistic about the fact that if we really want this club to persist, I haven't heard, as long as I've been around here, I haven't heard anyone come up with a solution how we're going to pay for it. And that $200,000 a year of profits we're generating from the club, that's a huge swing from 200 loss to 200 profit. And with all due respect to Trustee Jane, I don't need to do extensive studies to understand that $200,000 a year is not going to fund, $8 million of repairs or $10 million, whatever Clarendon Hills spent. That math just doesn't work. I don't need a study to tell me that. So anyway, I'll shut up now and let Trustee Manzo speak.
Well, first, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I'm glad that everybody's taken time out of their schedules to come and have this discussion. Before I get into my comments, I do want to set the record straight on a couple of items. There has been no topic that's been discussed more than sports core in the village of Oak Brook. We not only have discussed it at board meetings, we've discussed it at sports core meetings. We've discussed it in elections. Our elections are about the sports core. And the question was asked, well, how much did we make before? I think that was Trustee Jane. Nothing. We lost money. We lost tons of money subsidizing the Bath and Tennis until recently. And what we said was there's a better way. There's a better way to save and preserve the B&T for the residents. And I remember 4 years ago when Larry Herman was then running for trustee, along with Jim Nagel and Shares Reddy, that they said, we want to save the sports core. And they said, it's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. It can't be self-sustaining. We know we have an ordinance, but it's something that can't be done. And it was just pushed off as campaign rhetoric. Another campaign promised to the people of Oak Brook that was not going to be fulfilled. Well, I'm here to tell you, the new board majority kept their promise. Well, how did we do that? Well, first of all, I want to say one thing, because some of the comments here were about catering, don't allow, there's been catering going on before we even bought it. It's after we bought it. It's been since I've been on the board. This is the way it's operated. Different operators, but with the same service. We had Tasty Catering, and I know Mr. DePhillips had mentioned about competition. And one of the reasons I was so opposed to the Tasty Catering agreement, which was here before, was we were subsidizing Tasty Catering. We did all the work. We set up all the events. We even hired staff, probably over $100,000 worth of staff. We set up for the events. Tasty Catering came in, and they'd make money. But at every single event, the village of Oak Brook lost money. We lost money, so Tasty Catering could compete with our hotels and get subsidized by the village. We got rid of that. And what we decided to do was go a different route. And I still remember 2 years ago, some on this board, some of our residents, some on our sports court committee, when we presented that we were going to go out to bid, and we did go out to bid, and we said, with this new process, we were going to make money. And the response was, absolutely not. Your numbers are faulty. I know Marilyn and Joe and Greg worked on it, and I heard comments from the residents. What do they know? This is going to lose money the same way Tasty Catering lost money. Because we've never made money at the B&T. We've always lost money. Well, numbers are in. We made money, and we're making money. Not enough for all the repairs, but we're making money. And I think that's important because for the first time, we're not bleeding. And the reason it's so important is that money that we're making, we no longer subsidize it with our police and fire fund. It was idiotic for us to take money away from our police and fire in order to have a B&T. It made no sense. And I'm glad we're not doing that any longer. Another comment that came is, why don't we have reserves? We have plenty of reserves. We probably had more than we've ever had in our history. All funds, I think we're up to $100 million. That's not the question. The residents told us in the referendum they don't want that money used for these repairs. Do we have enough money to make these repairs? Do we have $8 million? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But the residents, and I agree with them, said don't take that $8 million and make these repairs and do the remodeling. And when the presentation first came, this was our problem. This wasn't a chef problem, Chic Chef. This was him trying to help us solve our problem. And the problem was, we have these repairs, we don't have the money. And the first, my understanding was shared cost, and the board, I think, everyone except one trustee said, no, we're not going to share a cost, and we're not going to allow a structure this large. We're just not going to allow it. It doesn't go with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to preserve it. So we thought it was dead, and we needed a smaller footprint, and he cut it in half. But most of this $8 million, as was presented, is not for the banquet room. It is not. There is a modest increase on the banquet room. They're no longer looking for a huge increase, but most of this money is going to serve our residents if they want to go there. It is open to the public. And I did want to mention something. I'm not an attorney, but when I read that the deed says we must maintain the existing facility in 1977 had a banquet. It had a pool. It had a tennis. It had golf. I don't know that we're allowed to knock it down. I think there could be an argument that that may possibly violate the deed. But I thank you for bringing up that is an option. I personally would not want to be part of the board that destroyed the B&T. Maybe a board after me can do it. I don't think that I want to be part of that. I want to preserve it. I want to preserve it for future generations. And now there's an option in front of us that says we can preserve it, we can pay for all the repairs, and it's not going to cost the village $1. And I asked all the same questions that were asked tonight. Well, what happens in the middle of construction? I asked village manager Greg Summers, what if he starts building it and runs out of money? And then we're stuck. I think one of the residents mentioned that. We're not stuck. They put in a construction bond. That will get finished. And again, not $1 to the village. Wait a minute. What happens if after a few years of operation, he goes belly up? Well, then we have an $8 million facility. Is there a lien against the facility? No, there isn't. No, there isn't. Those are the same questions we asked. But there is something I'm going to push back quite hard on. The way the staff and the village president handled this is probably the most transparent I've ever seen in my 14 years here. Not only are we coming here and listening to the residents at a village board meeting, then we're going to refer it to the sports corps to have another conversation. After the sports corps meeting, we're coming back again here to hear again from the residents. Where's your transparency? Here it is. We're having a conversation. We're not going in a back room and privately discussing it like one of the trustees mentioned we should. No, no. This is being done in open, in public session, the way that it should be. And I am proud of the village, I'm proud of the staff, I'm proud of what's being done. And if this is allowable, and it has been for the last 3-4 decades, I think it's a viable solution. It's one that we need to look at. And details have to be looked at, the structure has to be looked at, the landscaping has to be looked at. But first and foremost, can it be done and do the finances work? If that's determined, yes, then we could go and talk about the other items. But it doesn't make any sense to talk about it now. But this is what transparency is. There is no private meeting. This is not a topic for executive session. It's a topic for public session. And that's what we did. We're talking to the public. We're having this conversation in public, not in private, in public. And Trustee Martin is correct. There's a lot of proposals that come our way that we've said no to. And I think many thought this wasn't going to come back because really our parameters were quite stiff. You pay 100% of the $8 million and you cut that structure in half from what you want. Most of us, I think, thought that's never coming back. Those are very tough parameters. You know, you want to talk about a sweetheart deal, this is a sweetheart deal for the village if it can be done, and we'll determine that it is. Trustee Nagle is correct. He did ask if he can take over the operations. And I did say it was not going to look good. But I also said something else, very, very important. It's illegal. You cannot enter into an operation. Someone had asked me, why don't you put one of your restaurants in the sports core, in the golf? Because it's illegal. We're not going to do it. The question about the deed is still going to come up. We are going to do it. Unfortunately, you talk to 5 attorneys, you get 5 different opinions. But I want to push back on the transparency. This is as transparent as it comes. We're sitting in front of you. We're not doing it behind closed doors. We're not doing it once here at the board meeting. We're doing it another time at the sports core. Everybody can attend. And by the way, trustees can attend. That is not accurate. Every trustee can come to a sports core committee meeting. They can't engage, they can observe. It is not illegal. It is not improper for trustees to come to committee meetings. They just can't participate. If you participate more than 2, then it is illegal. So I welcome everybody to the next sports core committee meeting. And then after that, guess what? Back here for another conversation. So this is open, this is transparent. There's a lot more I have to say, but I'm going to reserve it because it's been a long night. And I thank you for all your patience. And I thank you for being involved, and have a great night. And that's all I have to say.
I want to just pick up on something Mike said. He said he would not want to be on the board that would vote to close this or have to vote to close it. And that really sums up the dilemma and the paradox that this board has. You've heard time and time again tonight that these issues are, I know some people said, or some trustees said, this is being sprung upon us. The issues that we're talking about the future of the sports court and the Bath and Tennis in particular, have been going on for decades. As long as this place has been losing money, it's been talked about in various iterations for decades. The problem is there's never been a viable solution presented. And so the easy thing is for a board member is to kick the can down the road. And so, yes, we are actively trying to, we've done great work in the last couple of years on the operational side, restoring profitability throughout the sports core. We are facing up to these really monumental challenges, and we're looking to find answers. And we came up with an answer that we thought would allow us, and we still think would allow us, to continue the club. And now we know we have to go into some exploration with our community. I know that you are all valuable participants of our community, longtime members of our community. There certainly are other constituencies we need to hear from. And we need to figure out, are we going to preserve this jewel or not? And if we're going to preserve it, we've got to continue to have these tough discussions. I am not willing to pass this on to the future like it's been done in the past. We've got to figure out what's going to happen with this. Because I'm telling you something, that 60-year-old pool could have a catastrophic failure tomorrow, and we don't have a plan. The building itself is not in great shape. It's not going to last another 10 years. The tennis courts, God bless the tennis pro who takes $75 or $7,000 a year of clay and tries to patch it up, but those courts are in very bad condition. So we are really, as I said in my introductory comments, we're at a crossroads. And you've got a board here that is willing to face up and deal with the issues. However that plays out, we need to come up with some conclusions. I don't want to leave this to the next board. So I'm going to ask if I can get a motion to refer this matter on for further discussion at a sports core committee, which you're all welcome to attend. And let's start talking about, I think the first issue that they need to address is we need to start figuring out how we're going to decide if we're going to continue this or if the community really wants to shut this thing down. And if the conclusion is we want to continue it, then we have to come back to this discussion about, okay, how are we going to pay for it? So may I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay, so maybe state the motion?
A motion to refer
to the
to Sports Core Committee.
Okay. Second?
Council Lake can make a motion to refer to the Plan Commission. If we're going to get all the villages' input, I think refer to all the hotel committee, let's get the whole village involved and get everyone's thoughts. You know, Mike Scheid gave a nice comment tonight. We don't know where a solution might come from. So I think it behooves us to listen to everyone, refer to all the committees and the Plan Commission.
Okay, so
I'd like to make
we've
that
got
motion.
competing motions. I'm not a Roberts Rule expert. I'm going to defer to our attorney. I also would ask our village attorney how we refer things to places like the Planning Committee, the Planning and Zoning Commission, a matter like this.
Well, there's actually,
I second the motion on the table to defer to the sports core.
Thank you.
we need a second.
Okay, so okay, so we got a second on that
You got a
motion.
second from,
All right, so you want to take a vote on that motion?
Call for the
And then we can
question.
introduce a new motion after.
Well, point of order. Actually, I think it's already statutory. If you look at the Sports Core Committee, it says that they shall make a writing. So I don't even know, I'll defer to the village attorney, but I think we're under statutory duty that they have to comment on it regardless if we make a motion or not.
a motion on the floor and a second to put it to the sports core. I'd entertain a vote on it.
All right, we have a vote on the motion on the table.
Trustee Manzo.
Yes.
Trustee
Can
Martin.
I ask a question before we vote on that? Are there two competing motions or there's only one motion?
We're just dealing with the
What-
first motion right now. Just the first motion on the table to refer to the Sports Core Committee.
Trustee Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Nagel.
Yes.
Trustee Reddy.
Yes.
Trustee Tsinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jane.
Yes.
Okay, you got it? All right, motion carries. Now, do we want to entertain additional motions? Is that,
It's up to you.
okay. If you want to make a motion, go
Sure, I'll
ahead.
make a motion to refer to the Plan Commission and the Hotel Commission or Committee.
We have a second.
Second.
All right. You have discussion? I want to turn it to the, start with the village attorney. How does that even work?
Well, there's really nothing before the planning and zoning at this point in time. You have, you don't even have any requests for any zoning relief or any planning relief. So traditionally, the way the village dealt with these issues with the sports core is to start there, then it would move through there. If they gave an approval to the plan or they made any recommendations, it would come back here. And then at that point in time, if there was ever going to be any kind of plans or architectural or any kind of plans that would be done, then it would go to the planning and zoning. So there's really nothing other than for them to even review at this point.
Go ahead.
Nothing's been submitted.
There are, I think
Well,
there's
I mean,
only
it
drawings
was,
at
it was
this
up
point.
today for a vote on the, to allow them to go ahead and do this. So, and Greg made a presentation with all the plans. You know, if there's a PUD, a planned urban development, or anything like that, we always send it to the Plan Commission.
I don't disagree with that. What I am saying is that my understanding at this point, and it was my understanding that this was getting presented tonight. Now, as part of everything, they still have the requirement, and they would still have to submit final plans to be reviewed. That would still have to be done. They don't have, from my understanding, they don't even have any architectural plans or any engineering done at this point.
At this point, they have the conceptual architectural plans as they were presented tonight. They do not have the construction drawings.
They don't have anything.
There is no plan development at the sports core, and there is no zoning relief required for what they've proposed so far.
The way it works, in every other instance, we never make the developer to go to architectural and mechanical drawings until they know if they can do it. And the way that they know that they can do it is it goes to the plan commission, and then it comes back to the board, and then we talk about it. So if he's gonna go ahead and spend, you know, 200,000.
I think that's part of the problem, that he doesn't want to move forward. What also happens, and what traditionally happens here, is that developers come in, they present here, they get feedback from here, and then they get referred back to planning and zoning.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I wanted to share that the sports core is handled in a different section of the village code. The planned development is only an overlay district for our commercial areas, so it is a little bit different. In addition, though, the history of the sports core does include an approval for a special use. I would have to go back and see exactly when that approval took place, but that special use has already been approved, allowing for the recreational facilities within what is called the CR district. So this property is the Conservation Recreation District. The only other parcels that you really see in the village that have that particular use are the Park District properties and, of course, the Sam Dean Conservation.
There's nothing.
I just want to clarify. So the motion that just passed is to go back, take the issue back to the Sports Core Committee with the initial intent of having the Sports Core Committee lead a village-wide discussion about the viability and desirability of continuing the Bath and Tennis Club, right? And I admit that part of that discussion is going to be, if the conclusion is to shut it down, do we shut it down tomorrow? Or do we just have a plan to shut it down when the thing falls apart, right? There's a lot of things to discuss. But that's what I heard us just say we have to do first. So as the village attorney said, you know, there's not even a formal plan to do anything yet. And if there was a formal plan, we know very clearly from tonight, we're not ready to do that until we figure out what we want to do.
I don't even know that there's even a petition.
So, President Herman?
Go ahead.
President Herman, just a clarifying question. So I understand, I just want to make sure I understand what we are sending to the sports core. So the statement that we are sending to the sports core is that we want them to evaluate what are the strategic options for us and what they would recommend we should do with the Bath and Tennis and the banquet facility. Is that the problem statement?
I want to clarify. I think the threshold inquiry is, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We had a lot of people here make comments that, you know, its time has passed. Shut the damn thing down, right? Let's not waste our time with all these other hypotheticals until we reach a conclusion as a community about what we want the future to be of the club, right?
So
Once we
what the-
decide what we want the future to be, if the conclusion of the community is shut it down, I think we've got our answer. If the conclusion of the community is don't, we want to preserve this for future generations, for whatever reasons we say to bring the community together, then we're going to have a discussion, which I would ask the Sports Core Committee to initiate, about, okay, how are we going to make that happen?
Right.
We came
So-
today
so
with,
the problem
we came today, pardon me, let me just finish. We came today with a, thinking that the community wanted to continue this thing, we came today with a Plan A, right? So back to my Plan A, Plan B analogy, if the conclusion is that there is a will to continue this, then the Sports Core Committee is going to have to help us figure out what that Plan B is, or if they
So
like
the
Plan A.
problem statement we are sending to the sports core committee is, we want you to engage with the community to come up with an answer as to what your recommendation is to the future of the Bath and Tennis and banquet facility.
I
Is
think
that-
that's
I'm just
correct,
trying
but I want to be
understand
clear
what
that it's not my intention, this is just me speaking, it's not my intention that the Sports Core Committee members themselves are going to reach that conclusion. I think that we're going to have to figure out a process to get, you know, meaningful and widespread public input.
I would
Right, I
also
just
add
wanted
one
to
more
make sure-
thing. There's no petitioner at this point either.
Who was presenting today then?
Yeah, who is presenting?
So the village is presenting this and not the tenant?
I think I'll let Greg,
Yeah, the village is advancing the conversation for the purpose of determining what President Herman has outlined regarding what is the future, how do we operate, what do we operate, or what do we cease operations of on the facility. There was a petitioner up until last night who withdrew.
I'm sorry, there was a
There was a petitioner proposing this project who withdrew yesterday evening.
So Greg, just to understand, there was a petitioner till last evening. The original intent was to propose to vote on that petition, and we have now shifted this as a conversation. Is that correct?
No, the original purpose was to have a conversation about the petitioner's proposal.
Where was that articulated? Where was that articulated? In which place was that articulated? In any of the memos, in any of the board meeting package? I'm just trying to understand where and how did we articulate that the original purpose of this was to have a discussion? Because I walked away with the understanding, we have a petitioner and we are going to vote on it.
It was placed on a public agenda for discussion. It was placed on there with the
Wait.
ordinance for discussion. Just for clarity, there was a comment made about the drafting of the ordinance. The way the village's contractual arrangement works with the law firm, that ordinance did not cost the village any money to prepare.
Michael? Yeah. I'm very confused now. So the petitioner who's Chic Chef, he withdrew his petition last night?
Yes.
Yep.
And so he does, so why are we going through this?
We're having a,
Plus the
we've
future.
had for the last 2 hours, we're having a conceptual discussion, right? This is what we haven't, what I said we haven't had. We're having a conceptual
Maybe if we
discussion.
cancel the meeting?
There's a possibility, right? If we conclude that Plan A is indeed what the village wants, that we can revive the proposal. But I don't think the guy's going to want to, I mean, we're threatening deed issues and all that kind of stuff. He's going to take a step back. Let us figure out what we want to do before he's going to waste any more of his time.
Well, if he is going to do it, then I would suggest that, like every other person that wants to develop in this town, he has to come here, present his ideas, face the questions from the board, so we can flesh everything out. And I think that was the confusion. I thought it was up for a vote. That's what it said on the agenda, to either we pass the ordinance or we don't pass the ordinance.
And the way I introduced the topic is I made, the very first thing I said is, we're not going to be voting on this tonight, we're going to be talking about it.
and I know that when we spoke Friday, I had even indicated that it wasn't going to be voted on, so.
Then I would make a motion to deny the ordinance as proposed.
We deferred it. We referred it to Sports Corps. It's been referred.
What?
The topic's been referred to the sports court. There's nothing to vote on.
Right.
The agenda item said it was up for the vote
It's
today.
been, and the whole topic's been referred, and the conceptual ideas have been referred to the sports court for further discussion.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
When would the sports board meeting be?
It's not an open meeting.
Guys, I appreciate it. I will stick around and talk to all of you. I'll stay here as long as you want to talk, but as you know, this is not the part of the meeting where we engage in public discussion. So I will promise to stick around and talk to all of you. No, Elaine, you know better than anyone, that's not how it works, okay?
Of course she was.
I just said, Elaine, you understand how it works. You're a former trustee, okay?
I would hope, I would
I will
hope,
stay
I
here
would
and talk to you all night long. Elaine, please, okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to, let's see where I'm at, I kind of lost track. Okay, we're at the close of the meeting. I'm going to invite the trustees to individually address the public. You'll have 2 minutes. I would respectfully ask the trustees, we've done a good job beating this topic to death tonight. I would urge you not to use this session to talk more about this topic, but it's your time. So trustee Manzo, you please begin.
Me? Yeah. Oh, happy to report that Honest Illinois Motorist got another victory in the appellate court division. The decision was to uphold IDOT's removal of the red light camera on Route 83 and 22nd. So unless the Supreme Court takes it up and changes it, which I think is doubtful, that camera will never be, that corrupt red light camera will never be seen again on that corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Okay, so I have so many people in the audience today that I know are actively listening. So in the spirit of community engagement, I am also the liaison to the Community Engagement Committee. I suggest all of you join those meetings as well. We are also hosting a pancake breakfast. I would like the community to come out. It's May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Come in your best Star Wars attire, 10 a.m. Oh, at the firehouse? Yeah, the on the back of the building. I will also remind you, in the spirit of quashing any negativity and divisiveness that often comes from the lack of education, we are hosting our international festival to try to educate our community about all the different backgrounds that are represented here, to try to alleviate some of this. That will be in August, I think, is the official date. So look out for that as well. And while we're so excited about the Sports Corps, we have great new GPS systems on our golf carts that have been installed. Come out and try using them. Residents can book their tee time a full day in advance, which gives you extra time as a benefit of being a resident, so go do that. And then Bath and Tennis memberships are available and open, and I would love to see some of you guys out there in the summer. I'll be dressed less formally, but still willing to engage with many of you about the village. So please come out and do those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Out of sight, out of mind, I don't want to forget. So Trustee Tazinga, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for participating from such a long distance. I have no idea what time it is in Korea or in India, but I know it's not almost 10 o'clock, so. Trustee Jain.
Thank you, President Herman. 8:20 in India right now. Firstly, I congratulate all the candidates who won in the recent election. Congratulations. And all those people who spent the time to stand for the election. And I think the village work has already started, as we all seeing. And secondly, I really appreciate all the work that our village administration, staff, and the leadership is doing. Any of the discussion we have this has nothing to do with reflection on their character and their work, and I've always commended them, and I commend them for all the effort you're putting. Thirdly, I think this discussion has been constructive. The intent for us is to be transparent. I was heartened to see that some of the board members have been more engaged, had some of the answers. So obviously, it's more transparent to them. In the spirit of expanding that to all the board members, including people like me, I would encourage that we learn from our things, and we always have an opportunity to improve. So let's find a way to engage, communicate, review some strategic issues and policy matters in a more open, but much better way, so that all of us feel that it's transparent and it's open. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Reddy.
Thank you. Thank you, President Herman. At the outset, I would like to personally thank the residents of Oak Brook for electing me. I am truly honored and grateful for the trust you have placed in me. I am committed to serving with integrity and purpose. I would like to thank all the candidates in the recent elections who expressed their interest in willing to serve their time and energy. Elections are often contentious and divide people. It is incumbent on us to take an extra step across the aisle and heal the wounds and move forward together united. Thank you again for your support, blessings, and giving me another opportunity to serve 4 more years. Now the real work begins. As I step into my second term, I recognize the importance of unity and collaboration. Our community stands at a crossroads, and I believe it is essential to bring people together, fostering open dialogue and mutual respect and understanding among all residents. I will work to bridge the divides, celebrate our diverse perspectives, and help build a stronger, more inclusive community for everyone. Today, I'm especially heartened to see so many residents taking a genuine interest in the Sports Corps, a unique and cherished asset of a village. Let's build bridges and not walls. Thank you again, residents of Oak Brook. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Nagel?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. All right, I know a few minutes ago I said I would stick around as long as it takes to talk to you, anyone who wants to talk. What I neglected to realize is we have to adjourn to closed session now. I don't know how long it's going to take, but if you want to wait around till after that, fine. If not, please call me. I had a couple of conversations today with people that were in this room who reached out to me. I'm an open door. Reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you. So with that, I want to move to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing, one, the minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, Section 2C5, to consider the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the village, and 2C5 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act respectively. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Jane? Trustee Jane? Trustee Manzo?
Yes.
Trustee Martin?
Yes.
Trustee Nagel? Yes. Trustee Reddy?
Yes.
Trustee Tosenga?
Okay, well, we have
1, 2, 3, 4, you got 4?
4 votes, motion carries. Okay, there's no more additional business to be conducted after the closed meeting, so the regular meeting will be adjourned from the upper level conference room. Thank you all for coming tonight.
I'm waiting for you to do nothing.